Welcome to the 8th episode of the Nerdom and Other Nonsense Anime Podcast. This is part 2 of our spring 2017 season first impressions. So please go listen to episode 7 if you want to hear our thoughts on the shows that air Sunday through Wednesday. But today we'll be finishing out Thursday through Saturday shows as well as unveiling our fancy new voting system to decide what we're going to cover throughout spring. Let's get right back into this. Are you ready, Leo?
I'm definitely ready. A couple of these shows are pretty good, but it's definitely peppered with some garbage also.
We will get to the garbage. We are saving the best for last. So, starting with Thursday, KADO, The Right Answer, which is airing on Crunchyroll. The Japanese title is Sekaisuru KADO. The studio is Toei Animation, and the director is Kazuya Murata, who also directed Gargantua of the Verger's Planet and the Full Metal Alchemist movie, The Sacred Star of Milos. So, episode 0 is called Ninovo. This was an introductory episode that doesn't have a ton to do with what the show is actually going to be about, but it introduces us to the main character and why he's important. A guy named Hanamori Shun is working in the General Affairs Division of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, International Intelligence and Communications Agency. There's a lot of bureaucracy in this show.
Yep.
He's getting transferred to Foreign Affairs, we find out, and he has a coworker whose name is Shindo Kojiro. They go off an assignment to convince this factory owner to close his factory and sell his land back to the government, because the government wants to build a multi-purpose hall there. So Shindo is the interesting character, and he's the one who's going to become the main character of the show. He asks to tour the factory, and he kind of is taking a strange interest for a bureaucrat in all of their production techniques. And afterwards, when they go back to report to their boss, Shindo makes a case that like the factory could probably stay open if they just had some new funding for new tech and technology investments. So the boss, Igarashi, he's not completely against the idea, but he just thinks it would be smarter for the factory owner to just take the money and go retire. They're offering him plenty of money, and there's no reason for him to really turn it down. It's a good deal.
Well, and Shindo's initially sent because he's the best negotiator they have, right?
Yes, he's a
the
really
best
good
there ever
negotiator. Well, we find out how good he is over the course of this episode for sure. He is definitely like incredible investigator or negotiator, sorry. Yeah. So Shindo and Hanamori, they head to a bar after doing all this, and Hanamori just like begs him, please just finish this stupid job so we can go on vacation before we're transferred to the Foreign Affairs Department. And Shindo's just sitting there like folding origami, which seems to be one of his hobbies, while they drink, and they're joined by two friends from other agencies. One's a woman named Natsume Ritsu from the NSA, the National Security Agency, and the other is a guy named Asano Shuhei from the Public Safety Commission. And Shindo tells them that it's strange for Igarashi to be giving a direct order to get this project done, because it's probably just a pet project he's had collecting dust in his drawer for the past 20 years. So he asks to see Ritsu's boss at the NSA, and she refuses at first, but on their walk home, Asano is talking about Shindo and saying, man, this guy has so much energy. He's probably meant for a bigger job than what he has right now. And they're just, basically talking about... Yeah, foreshadowing. Definitely foreshadowing. So Shindo and Hanamori go home, and I don't know if they live together or if they're just like rooming together or what, but Hanamori goes to bed because he's pretty drunk. And Shindo stays up and he starts Googling like metal plating processing technology. And while he's doing that, he gets a text from Ritsu saying that she set up a meeting with her boss for him in a couple days. So at that meeting, they have like a really quick lunch meeting in like a cafeteria, and the boss's name is Ubuka Kiyotaka. He's this chief cabinet secretary. He's a big honcho. And Shindo asks him for an introduction to this professor of physics named Mifune Tetsuto. And he kind of really impresses the big honcho with just his confidence and his ability to just get through this meeting. So he actually is offered a job like right on the spot, but he turns it down. He says, I got a new job in foreign affairs. Maybe when that's done, I'll come work for you. So Shindo goes, he meets with this science professor and tells him basically he has this idea that he calls a 50-50 prospect. And then he goes back to the factory and tells the factory owner about it. And the owner's unsure, but his workers bust into the room. They're like, no, wait, we think this is a great idea. Shindo, we heard you talking about it. And the idea is to create a low friction plating technology that will greatly reduce the friction between metals as they rub against each other. And so the science professor who we contact would handle all the theoretical calculations and the physics, and the factory would have basically 30 days to make this happen. So then we get like a montage of them working on it and like failing and then trying again, trying really hard. And once 30 days is up, Igarashi, the boss who wants this deal to go through, gets really impatient and he just goes to the factory himself. And it turns out that the factory owner is an old acquaintance of his, and he tries to just slam close this deal. But just as he's getting there, they come to a eureka moment, and they create this new frictionless plating through a process called supermetallization. And they're like, this is going to revolutionize the whole auto parts industry, the whole manufacturing industry, and has an estimated market size of 100 billion yen. So then at this point, Igarashi has no choice but to admit that the factory should stay open. And we get this reveal on a photo on the wall that Igarashi and the boss of the factory used to work together at this factory. Igarashi used to be like the manager of the factory, and his whole idea with this little pet project was to just give money to his old buddy so he could retire safely and easily. But now that he's, back in the game, he doesn't need to do that.
Hooray
So yeah, and then they're just basically like, Shindo is the greatest negotiator of all time. You're like, I can't believe he did this. So the last scene of the episode is where everything starts moving towards what the series is actually going to be about. Because Shindo and Hanamori are on a plane. They're at Haneda Airport on the runway, getting ready to leave to go for their foreign affairs assignment. And out of nowhere, first of all, they have this conversation about what negotiating really means. And it turns out Shindo feels that negotiating means that you have to get the best deal for both parties. He doesn't feel like you have to just screw over the other guy. He wants the best outcome for everyone, and that's why he's the top negotiator. While he's talking about this giant cube appears in the sky outside their window. Hanamori is like, what the hell is that? And it starts coming towards them. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then it slowly just starts to envelop the plane, except it's not completely solid, it seems like. And they kind of get sucked into this goo-like substance. And the whole plane disappears. And everybody at the airport's like, what the hell is going on? And that's where the episode ends. So it's a pretty good teaser intro. And then we move on to episode 1. So we're right back at Haneda Airport, and everybody's like, what is going on? The plane has been enveloped by this cube.
Rightfully so.
Yeah, exactly. And Ritsu at the NSA is getting information coming in, and she sees that Shindo was on the manifest of this plane. So she's freaking out. And meanwhile, a helicopter crew flies towards the cube, this group of intrepid reporters, it seems like. They fly up to the cube. They confirm that it's 2 kilometers long per side. So it's a giant cube. And the sides all seem to be constantly shifting with this ornate detail. It's kind of weird. The government then calls a status meeting and to report back on what the hell is happening. And this young girl interrupts the meeting. And it turns out she's the assistant to that physics professor that we met last episode, Mifune. Her name is Shinawa Kanada. And she's a theoretical physicist, and she's pretty eccentric.
And I'm pretty sure she consumed too much caffeine before the scene.
And she basically presents evidence that the plane might not have been crushed by the cube, because everybody just assumed it had been crushed underneath the weight of this cube. But she shows some scientific data that shows that the plane didn't really slow down. It didn't move when it touched the cube. It just kept going straight at the same velocity. So that we would assume that the cube didn't offer much resistance, and therefore it may not be solid. It might be a liquid form or some kind of gaseous form. So she presents the idea that all these people on the plane might still be alive. So then the whole show changes because the prime minister says, okay, our mission is to save those people if they're still alive. We got to get inside that cube. So then they proceed to just like science the shit out of this. So
if you call slowly increasing the rate at which you try to do damage to the cube, yes.
Oh yeah. I mean, look at particle physics in real life. It's just like speeding particles up and slamming them into each other as fast as possible. It's not that dissimilar.
No, I mean, it was a Large Hadron Collider.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's all it's doing.
Exactly, yeah. So these scientists start probing away at the cube with like drones and robots, and at one point they get courageous enough to send a robot up to just touch the side of the cube. And when it tries to touch the cube, it starts to like bubble up and kind of isolate itself away from the robot's arm. And so the scientists call this reaction frigonics, which is a fake made up science word, but it sounds real. And so basically it's able to isolate itself and prevent anything from entering or affecting its border. So then they're like, okay, how far does this really go? Let's call in the big guns. So they bring in a tank, and the tank is going to fire an armor-piercing round, and they're going to fire it at the corner of the cube where it's the like thinnest. Basically, it's probably the least strong section of the cube, and so they either want to see if they can break through it or chip a piece off so they can at least study the cube easier. And so they fire this tank shell, and it doesn't go through. It just bounces off. But they do get a reaction. There's a helicopter up in the air, and it sees at the top of the cube that a staircase has opened up from inside the middle of the cube. And out walks our good friend and favorite negotiator, Shindo.
He's already our favorite.
Yeah, our favorite. The best negotiator of all time, yeah.
The best there ever was.
He's got to catch them all. So
he's going to negotiate them all.
Exactly, yeah. He then is followed closely by this guy who clearly looks like he's from another world, but he's human, it seems, but he's
very
got
eccentric.
He's got white hair, he's wearing like a long white robe, and he introduces himself as Yahakui Zashunina.
Inside everybody's head.
Yeah, he's basically speaking into the minds of the people who are listening, it seems like, with telepathy. And he starts his address off with mankind, so he's clearly from another planet. So it's very lucky that Japan's top negotiator just happened to be in this cube with this guy who's making first contact with humanity. And that's the end of the episode.
I feel like he planned that.
Yeah, he probably did. Yeah, maybe he did. I don't know. We'll find out. I'm interested to watch more of this show. Mm-hmm. The only issues I really had with it were that it did rely on CG animation a little too much. Like, I was fine when they were using it for the vehicles, but there was a lot of CG animation like in the scenes that were inside the plane and stuff. And
there's like one other scene where there's an animated character standing next to a CG character for no reason. And it's like glaringly obvious. I was just like, ugh, what's this about?
Yeah, it just looks awkward when that's happening. It's not terrible. It's not like Babuki Baranki or something, but it's close to that
I watched
at times.
That show, man.
Yeah, it was an okay show.
Pretty crazy.
I kind of got the vibe of the movie Arrival from last year, where it's like very science heavy in how they're like reacting to everything.
I can agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, just like I liked this. I thought it was like a good, like mature show. It kind of seems like something that's not completely anime until this guy showed up. So we'll see. It's going to be an interesting one. Let's move on to another show, though.
All right. Clockwork Planet. If you want to, you can watch it on Crunchyroll. Studio Zebek. Director is Tsuyoshi Nagasawa. And he did Heyore and Narako-san. And I didn't watch either. Were they good?
Oh, that was one show. That's one title. And I don't know if it was any good. That's just the most popular thing he did.
Okay, well, darn, neither of us have seen it. All right, episode 1, Gear of Destiny. So the Earth was destroyed a very long time ago, but a clocksmith named Y said he could rebuild the world using only gears. 1,000 years later, on the Sprocket calendar, February...
The Sprocket calendar.
Yeah, 2016 is where the story begins. The show opens up with a young boy named Naoto Miura, and he's directing an attack against some automatons. A blonde girl named Maria and her bodyguard are fighting them off also, but there are too many, so Naoto calls in some sort of android named Ryuzu. Man, these names this season are just killing me. Who just demolishes them with like spinning blades attack. It's no contest.
And I mentioned that I thought the OP was kind of terrible for this show.
I don't even remember it. I've only been able to watch this one episode.
Exactly. So
then it goes back in time. And Naoto is returning home from high school. He greets all his little clocks. He just has like a whole wall of them saying he'll become a clocksmith one day. And that he's like, but even though I've not been able to fix a single one of you, which is that you're the worst clocksmith in the history, dude. If you can't fix a single one of those on the wall, come on. So then a huge coffin-like contraption falls out of the sky from an airplane, because we saw it, and then right through his ceiling and on top of his table. It crushes a bunch of clocks when it does it, and he's like, no, my sweet lovers.
My sweet lovers. God, this kid.
So he opens the coffin-type contraption to find Ryuzu in there. We get a scene skip, and we have Maria complaining that a subordinate dropped a YD container, which contained a National Treasure class automaton.
So Nicolas Cage is going to make a movie about where he hunts down this automaton.
Or he's just going to show up. Dude, that would kill me if they actually did something like that. Like, they write this character in and we're like, okay, that's clearly...
So good.
So Maria's bodyguard is named Halter, and he tells her she needs to act more ladylike after she curses up like a crazy storm. She loses her mind. We jump back to Naoto. He can apparently tell from the sound alone that one of Ryuzu's gears inside her heart is stuck. Like, he has this insane hearing it gets worse here in a minute. Yeah. Naoto, even though he admits he can't even fix a single clock, can't stand the broken sound inside her heart. Everything else about her is so beautiful except for that one sound. So he pops open her chest and opens and finds the one little screw mechanism that isn't tight enough. So he can fix this extremely complicated automaton, but he can't fix my grandmother's cuckoo clock, apparently. So I'm led to believe that. He starts her back up, and it's just as the rest of the building begins to collapse from the damage. But Ryuzu wakes up in time and saves him and jumps out through the air into the distance. They land on top of another building, and Naoto proceeds to tell Ryuzu that he was able to sense just by the sound that she has over 4 trillion gears in her body.
Literally 4 trillion, 207 billion, 600 million, 8,643 gears in her body. He can apparently tell by just sound alone.
So suspending my sense of disbelief has been completely shattered at this point. Ryuzu calls him a pervert, which he then admits to, but then he asks him to be her master immediately after. He weighs the pros and cons. He's like, all right, there'll be probably military corporations after me. But he's like, come on, beautiful Automaton waifu. Come on, I gotta make a contract. And then I thought my screen switched over to a hentai on me. Because he takes her finger and puts it in her mouth to register. And I'm like, okay. But then we get a good 20 seconds of this finger going in and out of the mouth. Saliva and all. It was a finger blowjob.
And like I said, where did this saliva come from? She's an android. She doesn't make saliva. Maybe she has like various lubricants inside of her.
She's part sex bot, so obviously she would be installed with various lubricants for obvious reasons.
Yeah, I assume that later on in the series we'll find out that her creator was a total pervert, so he probably put these types of things into her. Yeah.
She then suggests that they stay at a love hotel for the night because obviously his home's been wrecked. And assures him that no matter how filthy or depraved his desires are, she is bound to fulfill every one of them. Ooh. Then there are a couple delinquents come up and they try to pull Ryuzu away so they can obviously take her out and bang her. But Naoto fights back, and then Ryuzu kicks all their asses and saves Naoto. But Ryuzu is very turned on in a way about that. from that scene. It was weird. So they go to a manga cafe instead, and Naoto goes to fall asleep on the couch, and Ryuzu scolds him for ignoring the chance to fall asleep on her lap. Ryuzu is probably the best thing about this show. Is just her personality.
Yeah, she's kind of like an arrogant bitch, and I like that about her character. But
she's very blunt about everything she says. So
Naoto doesn't really deserve her, though.
Oh no! So he falls asleep while Ryuzu is asking him why he treats her like a human girl, and before he can answer, he's out. So yeah, don't get the answer to that question. Mm-hmm. So Maria and Naoto simultaneously wake up to some sort of gear sound. So apparently Maria has this same superpower. Mm-hmm. She rushes out of her bedroom and forgot to put on clothing, so we can get a blocked shot of a naked lolly.
It's like full frontal nudity with just like something in the foreground covering her, her vag, basically.
Yeah, I'm just gonna keep reading these notes as you wrote them. God, I fucking hate this fucking show so fucking much at this point.
Yeah, I was pretty not into this show when that happened. Yeah,
naked lollies, come on. So Maria is then in a meeting with some of the government officials, and she finds out that the Kyoto grid is going to collapse if a clocksmith doesn't fix it in time, and 20 million people will die. We also found out that the government knows about this, or the army knows about this, and they're just going to let it happen regardless.
Yeah, so it seems like there's different factions that have different motivations in this world, and yeah. Do you want to take episode 2, or should I?
I hadn't seen it.
Okay, I'll do it then. So, episode 2, Marie threatens this officer in an elevator and forces him to tell her that when the Kyoto grid purge is going to take place, that's going to kill like 20 million people. So apparently they have like 20 hours to fix this clock that's broken. And so later in the episode, Ryuzu is talking to Naoto. She tells him that she was built by this creator named Y about 1,000 years ago. So that's interesting. And Marie, meanwhile, is contacting this communications director named Officer Limons and asks him to patch her through to this service chief, Conrad, so she can talk to him about the problem. When he's patching her through, like Officer Limons kind of smiles this creepy smile, and chuckles to himself evilly. So clearly he's a bad guy. Marie talks to Conrad and decides she needs to go 24,000 meters underground to this big barrel of this clock and reattach stuff and fix it. Meanwhile, Naoto's going to school with Ryuzu, and she shows up dressed as a new transfer student, and she introduces herself to the class as Ryuzu, your slave. What? Her last name is literally your slave. Okay. So, and she tells the class to keep in mind that she's literally Naoto's property, which makes all of the guys in the class hate him instantly. So, meanwhile, Marie's crawling through a tunnel with her bodyguard, Halter, and the camera takes this opportunity to shove itself up her butt for a few seconds, and since she's a lolly... Don't worry, this show isn't the worst offender for lolly butts. We'll get to that.
No.
So Halter makes a joke that he's not as flat as Marie, who's like, I'm still developing, blah, 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 typical lolly shit. To which he's like, oh, something to look forward to. You can call me in 10 years. Jesus Christ.
Dude, this is... I don't have words for this. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So Marie uses some sort of power suit connected to a robot arm assembly to start repairing this clock. And meanwhile, Halter is beating the shit out of these robots that are attacking. He's apparently super strong. I don't know if he's an android or something, but he's crushing metal with his bare hands and really strong. They manage to repair this mechanism with a little bit of help from Conrad up top as well. And they basically get out of there with 18 hours to go. And so back to Naoto, he's just exhausted after a day at school with Ryuzu and having to deal with all these guys hating him. And Ryuzu tells him not to worry about beings of lower birth. She's like, the world has stagnated for the last 1,000 years, and it kind of makes her sad. And so Naoto's thinking about how he can kind of change things. Moving on. It turns out Marie and Conrad are looking at the clock. They still haven't solved the problem. The thing that they did 24,000 meters under the ground didn't work. So they kind of need a miracle because they have no way to narrow down which parts of the clocks and this huge planet of gears and in Kyoto would be the problem. So Marie is determined, and she's a woman who never thinks something is impossible. She's talking to Halter, and she's like being driven around, and like he's like, "Yeah, you're such a good girl," and he like throws her like a chocolate bar. It's like so stupid. But meanwhile, Naoto is taking Ryuzu out shopping for cute clothes because he's decided he wants to have his experience being with her be more like a date. And he tells her that you're more like a cute automaton girl to me, not just a clock. And she's really moved by that.
You think so?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure everybody views her as an automaton and not a clock.
Yeah, like, God, it's dumb.
Bad line.
She views herself as a clock. She's like, I'm just a clock. But she's clearly not. So Marie goes to meet with that evil dude, Lyman's, who tells her he's going to revoke her license if she refuses to withdraw from trying to fix the clocks. It's like ridiculous. He's going to like apparently let 20 million people die for no reason. It's a stupid contrivance. And so she's like, oh, you've sided with the military, or maybe even with Vacheron, who were the robots that attacked Halter underground earlier. And she thinks this is all a plot to discredit her family name, Breguet, which is apparently important in Clockwork Planet. So she throws this childish temper tantrum once she leaves, punching Halter in the stomach like a bunch of times, like little lowly punches, like little girl punches.
Punch like a girl.
And then they're upset, but then they go outside and they run into Naoto and Ryuzu at the end of the episode with 7.5 hours left. And clearly Naoto is going to be the key to fixing this clock since he has the hearing of, I don't know, like Batman or something. I don't know, but like better than Batman. I don't know. Who has good hearing?
This show, CGI blend is just, it kills me. It's way too intense. And like most of their eyes seem messed up to me. Like one's bigger or smaller than the other or slightly off. It's weird. I can't look at their faces.
Yeah, so this is from the original writer of No Game, No Life, I forgot to mention. And that show had crazy eyes too, for sure. I kind of liked that show's art style. Like No Game, No Life compared to this was way more colorful and fun looking.
Say, No Game, No Life was really colorful with like lots of blues and purples and stuff like that.
Yeah, this is kind of just like dark and brown a lot of the time, especially when they're underground. But it's not that colorful. It's not, I don't know. It just doesn't look that great.
Machines aren't really that colorful, man.
This is true. But let's move on to a show that is really colorful and I like a lot. It's called Tsuki ga Kirei. It's on Crunchyroll. It's from Studio Feel. The director is Seiji Kishi, who directed Angel Beats, Assassination Classroom, Carnival Phantasm, and a whole bunch of other shows you probably really liked. So episode
Somebody
1
has a boner for the studio.
Oh yeah, well Studio Feel did Oregairu, which I also really liked a lot too. But they also do some crappy shows, so it's like they're not always like 100% on target. So, but this show I think is. It starts off for episode 1, Spring and Hard Times. And the first thing you notice, like the instant you start watching this show, is that there's this beautiful intro of like unbelievably well animated like cherry blossoms falling off sakura trees. And
did you get to see those when you were in Japan?
I did, yeah, but not like this. This is like heaven version of what I saw in Japan. I saw some pretty great stuff in Japan, like at Shinjuku National Garden or Shinjuku Gyoen. They had pretty amazing cherry blossoms there and people taking wedding photos all over the place.
In Niigata, Japan, they have sake vending machines. Did you go there?
No. That sounds pretty cool, though.
Yeah.
Next trip. So, yeah. So, like a lot of romance anime start off with cherry blossom scenes in their first episode, but this one was like really breathtaking. They're like falling over a river, and it's just really well done. And they also, in the OP of the show, they have a version of this, but it doesn't look as good as this first episode intro. So, basically, this show is about a couple of middle schoolers who are gonna fall in love, but it opens with the opening ceremony of the middle school, and our first protagonist is a third-year girl named Akane Mizuno. She keeps sneaking looks at this boy while her friends are chatting, and later we find out that boy is named Kotaro. And he has a friend with pink hair named Roman, who a lot of girls are really interested in because he like looks really cute. And it seemed to me like at this point, like Akane was working up the courage to ask Kotaro out, but that wasn't quite the case. So basically, Akane is in the track club, and we see her running before returning home. She also has a sister, and their family all goes out to dinner together. And it turns out that Kotaro's family is going to dinner at the same restaurant. And they're in like booths right next to each other. And so their eyes meet, and they're both a little bit embarrassed about like being spotted by their classmate. But they both go up to get like a soda from the soda fountain at the same time, and Kotaro gets there first, and he sees her watching him, and so instead of getting soda, he tries to act more mature and gets coffee instead, which we find out later he hates, and it's terrible. He can't take coffee at all. But Akane's sister comes up to him, or comes up to her sister, and she asks her like, who is this kid that you were just looking at? And she's like, oh, we're in the same class. And so the mischievous sister goes to the mom, is like, oh, somebody from Akane's class is here, we should say hello to their family. And so their families have this like really big embarrassing like, hey, what's going on, blah blah blah, our kids are in the same class kind of thing that would happen when you were in middle school and out to dinner. And so Kotaro is like really embarrassed, obviously. But later on in the episode, we learn that Kotaro really likes to write. Like Akane is listening to him talk with his friends in the hallway, and they're asking if he's written anything new lately. And then we find out that this show has like a big sponsorship from the mobile messaging app Line, very clearly, because a lot of the conversations in this show take place over Line. And so Akane is like in charge of getting the line IDs of the members of this group that's going to be the equipment club for this upcoming sports festival. And Kotaro is one of them, but she's like too nervous to get his line ID. But she has noticed that she's starting to notice him more. He has like really curly hair. So she starts calling him Curly-kun whenever she sees him. And so later on, we see that Kotaro, who's, loves writing, he stops by a bookstore where he like regularly goes, but he starts looking at books that are like more about like girls. Like one book is called Schoolgirl, and it was written by a male author who wrote it from the perspective of a girl. So he's thinking about, maybe I can get this so I can understand girls better. And there's like an older guy in the shop who like encourages him to get that book and to get this magazine about girls, because he's like, hey, Kotaro's finally taking an interest in girls. He's just a little middle schooler. So Kotaro later gets in trouble because he didn't get a message from Akane to show up for the equipment group meeting. So they make him go like clean up a equipment shed or something, and Akane goes down and sees this, and she apologizes to him and helps him out, and she asks for his line ID, which makes him really happy. Also, before she does this, she has this little like squeezy thing, and this is a recurring theme. She calls it like her squeezy potato, and she gets
squeezy potato.
Yeah, she gets like really nervous, basically. And so like she squeezes this thing a few times to calm herself down. So like before she goes to talk to Kotaro, she squeezes this a couple times. So basically Kotaro finally joins the line group, and because he's pumped up that he got Akane's line ID because he thinks she's pretty cute, he like goes home and he has this like boxing match with like his long light switch that hangs down from his ceiling light. Like I used to have one of these that hung down from my ceiling fan at home, and I totally remember like when I was growing up like boxing with it, like punching it around. So it was really funny to see that animated. Like I was just like, oh man, I totally used to do this.
Yeah, you're like, I relate.
Yeah. And so the ED is like pretty cute too. That's basically how the episode ends. The first episode, like it's the ED is in this colored pencil style, and we see like the leaves change in the background while Akane and Kotaro's hands come closer and closer together very slowly, and then they hold each other's hands at the end. There's also like a Line app open, and it's showing messages in Japanese, but they're not translated on Crunchyroll, so I don't know what they say. And the other thing I would note about the art style of this show is it's like very soft, and there's a lot of like white highlighting on the borders of the character designs, which I've seen in other shows before, but it just gives it kind of like a softer feel. So anyway, let's move on to episode 2.
Dos.
So Kotaro we find out, has never shown any of the stories that he's written to anybody else. So that's interesting quirk about his character. He doesn't have a lot of confidence. It turns out the sports festival is going to take place at the school the next day, and he's talking to his parents and saying, you don't have to come. It's not going to be that interesting. But once he gets there, he kind of gets into it because he watches the 200-meter girls sprint, and Akane, who's the track star, just blows away everybody else. She's way faster. And also, he sees some other guys next to him who are like watching her go and like watching her run. They're like, "Oh, dude, look at her butt. It's so cute." And so he's checking her out, and he kind of blushes because like he's like, he's kind of annoyed at these guys, but at the same time, he's like, well, they're right. So after the race, he has equipment duty. So he goes to set up the next event, which is the tug of war. And he sees a guy walk up to Akane. And this guy's name is Hira, who is also on the track team. And he's kind of flirting with her, basically, and telling her she did a good job at the race. So Kotaro is in the next race. It's another 200 meter, and Hira is up against him. So because, he's a little jealous, he wants to do well in this race, but he gets destroyed by Hira. Hira wins by a lot, and Kotaro even trips and falls during the race and really scrapes up his hand. And so, also to add insult to injury, Hira like flashes a victory sign to Akane after he wins the race, and then all of her friends are like, "Oh my god, Hira like flashed a victory sign to you. Are you going out?" And she's like, No, I don't know why he did that. So Kotaro goes to get like treatment from like the school nurse, but the school nurse is just not there at that point. So this other girl, I think ends up being on the track team as well, bandages his hand up for him, and she does like a really terrible job, but she's kind of cute while she's doing it, and it seems that she's taking an interest in Kotaro, which will come. It'll be important later in another episode. But Akane has a meeting with other students before this scavenger hunt and this final relay race, but she accidentally drops her potato squeezy out of her pocket, and it falls into this like container that gets covered up almost immediately by somebody, and so she has no idea where it is.
No, just potato squeezy coon.
Yeah, don't get lost. Just prior to this, Kotaro had noticed that she was squeezing it before her race, and it made him curious about like what it was. So when she discovers she's lost it, she starts panicking. And because she's panicking, she screws up her job for the scavenger hunt, which was to put these little slips of paper into boxes for the third year so they knew what to hunt for in the scavenger hunt. So, and she's frantically searching for her potato, but she finally just she gets yelled at and she has to go back for her relay race. But Kotaro noticed what was going on, and he decides to start searching the storage room for this potato thing, the squeezy. Meanwhile, Akane is just so nervous that during the relay race, she drops the baton in the baton pass, and it causes her team to lose like the whole day. So she's really kind of upset about this, and some girls send Hira, the track star, over to cheer her up afterwards, but he doesn't really do a good job. He's basically like, "Oh, it's a good thing it wasn't a real track meet. Haha, you should just focus on the real thing." Prefecturals. Yeah. So that kind of makes her feel worse, and then she's heading back into the school building, and there's these girls who are giggling in the bathroom. She can hear them from the hallway just saying like, "Can you believe she dropped the baton? What a nerd." Just taking her down a peg. And so she finally gets back to the classroom. She's really upset. And Kotaro finally shows up. He's like panting. He's been running towards the classroom. And he's like, "I found the squeezy thing." And she gives him this huge smile.
Squeezy thing.
There's no other way to describe it. It's like a little beanbag. And
it's Squeezy Potato Coon. Come on, I've already named it.
Squeezy Potato. Sasha from Attack on Titan would love this thing.
Oh yeah, too bad she might try to eat it though.
Yeah. So she thanks him, and she like kind of gushes. She says like, "I'm so embarrassed about messing up, and it's really hard for me to be in front of people. but I love running so much that I do it anyway. And like Kotaro kind of works up a little bit of momentary courage and says, you shouldn't be embarrassed and that you're fine the way you are. And she like looks at him and she like, that makes her really happy. And so they both go home and they start chatting back and forth online, starting to build a little bit of a relationship. And Kotaro like does more shadow boxing with his light switch. And then he comes up with the courage to like show his writing to the guy from the bookshop from the first episode. And he had been talking about a line that a famous Japanese author named Osamu Dazai had said about you're not able to influence other people. Only people can influence themselves. And he was basically like, nah, that line was a lie because clearly Akane influenced him in this episode. And that's basically it. And at the very end, after the credits, there's a series of like little shorts with some of the side characters just to give us a little bit more context about those characters. Which were pretty cute, like just like a guy like hitting on one of the girls, like pressing her up against the wall and being like all romantic, and just a couple other things like that. It's pretty cool shorts. I really like this show. I think it's a really solid romance, and last year did not have a lot of great romance shows, so this is looking up.
Yeah, I don't really watch too many romance shows.
I'm a big fan.
Yes, you are.
Why don't we move on to another romance show?
That's yours too.
Oh, is
Just
this?
keep
okay.
talking.
Love Tyrant.
Your voice sounds better than mine anyways. I'm sure the listeners don't care.
That's fine. You have read the manga for this one, though, so you can chip in a couple of things. So the Japanese title is Renai Bokun. The studio is EMT Squared. And the director is Atsushi Nigorikawa, who most famously directed Anitori EX, which is that little show where like cute girls work out and you're supposed to work out at the same time with them. It's like a cute girl workout video anime. It's kind of funny. Besides that, he literally just did a bunch of episode directing on Naruto Shippuden and the original Naruto.
Which has finally come to an end.
Yeah, finally. Well, we got Boruto this
But then
season.
they started a new Naruto series. So it's like, Jesus Christ.
Oh, man. It's never going to end. It'll keep going forever, I guess. So this show acknowledges within like the first minute that it is straight ripping off Death Note. Like, complete rip off of Death Note. Except that instead of a Death Note, it's a Kiss Note. So anyone whose name is who's written in this notebook must kiss someone within 24 hours or death awaits. So that's the premise. So a blue-haired boy named Aino Seiji is our main character.
Seiji-kun.
He has his name written in the notebook, and a god of death girl, Shinigami girl, explains that if he doesn't kiss someone, she will die. And so since he realizes that she said that she will die, he just like he slams his door closed and tells her to go away because he doesn't care anymore. But she starts like begging and crying, and like he lets her back in before the neighbors call the cops, basically. And then they go up to his room, and she says a whole bunch of misleading stuff that makes him think that she wants him to kiss her. So he kisses her right on the lips, and she's like, I think you misunderstood me. And she explains that the way the note works is that you write someone's name X someone else, like so as if you were shipping somebody. And she's like, she turns on the TV and she's like, here, I'll show you. And Shio, be quiet.
Can you hear she's being a pain in the ass?
She really likes the show. It's okay.
You hate it or like it? Don't know.
She hates it. So she turns on the TV, and the Prime Minister of Japan, she writes his name in the book with like another cabinet member, and then 2 seconds later they just start making out on TV, and he's like, what the hell? So she tells him that she actually just wanted to see a BL scene between two famous voice actors, but accidentally wrote Seiji's name in the book by accident. So now he's gonna have to like stand in, and he's like, I don't want to be part of a BL scene, blah blah blah. So she adds that if he doesn't kiss somebody within 24 hours and his name's in the notebook, he's going to remain a virgin forever. So that lights a fire under his ass to find somebody to kiss.
Which it should for anybody.
So they go to school, and we get introduced to this floppy tits McGee-kun, or McGee-chan, named Akane Hiyama, who
You're
like
choking
basically
yourself up, dude.
she shows up and she's just like jogging and her like breasts are like jumping up and down, like very like, I don't know, it's ridiculous. And he's like, that's the target, I gotta kiss her. And so Shinigami girl believes that she's invisible at this point, so she's like checking out Akane's body, and Akane's not reacting. And then she like pantses her from behind, and like Seiji's like freaking out because he's like full frontal underwear. And then Akane then reacts and is like, oh, by the way, I can see you. She just didn't care that she was pants. Like, she didn't react at all. And then she asks who she is, and like the Shinigami girl says like, well, Seiji, I know Seiji really well. He kissed me. And then Akane goes full yandere, saying, you cheated on me. And he's like, but we're not even going out. And she's like, well, that might change in the near future, so you still cheated on me. And then even though you're not going out, that
is an ongoing joke in this entire series, is her misunderstanding something and stabbing them.
Yeah, she has these dual Gurkha knives that she pulls out and starts chasing after him. So the Shinigami girl and Seiji like run behind the school building, but she finds them again and she's gonna kill the Shinigami girl. But like before she can, like she writes their names in the kiss note, Akane and Seiji, and they become a couple kissing each other. And then the Shinigami shows her true form, which is actually an angel. She's actually not just an angel, she's a Cupid angel who brings people together, and her name is Guri. So now she tells them, now that they're in the notebook, they're going to get married no matter what. And also she decides, since she's having so much fun, that she's going to add her name to that same page. So now they're like a threesome. So she kisses Seiji again, and then Akane goes yandere and starts stabbing him to death right in front of everybody. But because they've been giving the blessing of angels, they now are like immortal. They can't die. So Seiji can get stabbed, and he can feel pain, but he doesn't die from Akane constantly.
And there are many
him.
scenes with one of those knives stuck in him.
Yeah, it's a pretty, like, even just in this first episode, the stabbing thing kind of gets a little old. Like, they use that joke a couple times. It's kind of funny the first couple times. But basically, after that, Guri decides like she needs to move in with Seiji. So she brainwashes his entire family into believing that she's their daughter so she can live with him. And then she has a supervisor named Coralie, who is this guy who takes over his family's cat. So it's just like his human face on a cat body that walks around. It's kind of weird. And he explains to Seiji and Akane that they really need to help out Guri with her job as an angel because she's really bad at it. And if she doesn't like help enough people, she's going to go to hell, and they're all going to go to hell and lose their souls. So then, before the end of the episode, a third girl gets thrown into the mix named Yuzu, who turns out is in love with Akane. And
it's her cousin.
Oh, and is also her little cousin, though she calls her like One-chan or whatever.
Yeah, which is, it happens.
Yeah.
Often in anime, so.
Yeah, that definitely happens. So she tries to steal the kiss note and write her name in it, but apparently only angels can write in the notebook. So to solve the issue, Guri, who now has taken a liking to Yuzu, adds her to the couple page. So now they're a foursome. And Yuzu runs to like finally kiss her cousin, her older cousin, Akane, but trips over a rock and kisses Seiji instead. And then we get more stabbing. And that's how the first episode.
And I'll just tell you, the rest of the series is basically rinse and repeat, rearrange, rinse and repeat, rearrange.
Yeah, I was watching this and I thought it was pretty dumb. I just felt it was something like a 13-year-old would write about like, oh, and then the invisible girl in pants goes and pantses the big-titted girl from behind. It's super kawaii.
And I will say I do enjoy reading the manga, but you can't take it seriously at all. It's just goofy.
Yeah, and I just don't know how this got, like, how did this rip off Death Note without getting, like, copyright problems and stuff? Like,
don't ask me.
I don't know, man. So, but that's Love Tyrant. So let's move on to another fan servicey show, one that I really like, called How to Raise a Boring Girlfriend Flat, as in the musical note flat. And that's on Amazon
not like
Strike.
an apartment?
No, not like an apartment. Japanese title, Sainai Heroine no Sodatekata Flat. And studio is A1 Pictures, and the director is Kanta Kame, who directed season 1 of this show, and also shows like Usagi Drop and Dimension W. So episode 0 of this show, just like in the first season, is a fan service episode, like pure fan service. But unlike the first season, we've already been introduced to the characters now because we've had a full season of them. So this had a lot more context behind it. Like episode 0 of season 1 was aired before the rest of the show, and we were like, why are we getting all this fan service now? Why are they not waiting till after the season? But this episode works a lot better. It airs chronologically before the series, and like it's basically Tomoya and all the girls going to a pool to try and get some ideas for like their doujin that they're drawing and programming. And yeah, it's just a lot of fan service done right. Like the thing that this show does extremely well is leg fan service specifically. All of the girls like unbelievable legs, and yeah, they're all like laying around in swimsuits and doing like funny things. I'm definitely a leg guy for sure. And this show has some girls that have legs for days. So and so like the girls are like fawning over Tomoya, but it's like it's in their personalities why they're doing this. There's reasons that came up in the first season for why they like him so much and why he has this little harem. And also he's kind of like he hasn't picked any girl, and he's also kind of just like neutral about all of this while it's all happening. He really just wants to make this game and take advantage of like the incredible talent of all these girls. So it's a fun fan service start. And so we get into episode 1, and this was interesting because it was kind of a flashback episode, but it gave us a lot more background on 2 of the main characters. So it starts out with Utaha and Eriri, who are arguing over character designs at the beginning of the episode. And it's funny because they talk about the fan service episode. They're like, yeah, Utaha, you added like 5 girls to that episode instead of 2, and it caused the art department to have to do so much more work. It's obviously like a meta joke about the actual art department for the show having to do a ton of work on that art. But
clever.
Yeah, after that, Tomoya and Megumi are looking on. They're just they don't understand why these 2 are always arguing, and basically that's when we get a flashback. And so it's about when Eriri first met Utaha at school, and she was kind of confronting her about getting closer to Tomoya because Eriri has had a childhood crush on Tomoya forever. She's the childhood friend type character, and Utaha is this famous writer. She writes light novels, and she's the author of a light novel called Metronome of Love, which Tomoya really liked, and that's why he got to know her. So Tomoya gives Eriri this light novel to borrow and take home and read. And even though Eriri is jealous of this girl, she reads the novel anyway, and she's kind of moved to tears. Like she can't deny that it's a really good novel and that Utaha is a really good writer. And so Utaha asks Tomoya about Eriri when they're out at a diner, and he tells her that her father's name is Spencer, and he works for the British Embassy, and her mother's name is Sawamura, so she's half foreigner. And Tomoya says like he's not really interested in her, though. He's not really interested in anybody. Eventually he says that he just wishes that she wouldn't hold the past against him, which sends Utaha into one of her barely contained jealous little rages because she like feels possessive about Tomoya already. So basically, Utaha wants to find out more about Eriri, so she forces her way into this little private art studio that Eriri has set up in school off of the main art room. And she looks at her artwork and she sees like some doujin art that she's drawn of like little girls, but she's like, oh, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And so she can't deny that Eriri is like a great artist. So basically, this whole episode is about them in their origins gaining respect for each other. And
so, I wish girls in real life were this aggressive. Make things so much easier.
I've met some girls that are this aggressive. It's kind of fun.
Wow, you must be drop dead gorgeous.
No.
So they're just flat out crazy, or
yeah, let's go with that.
Okay.
So Arumi admits that she was separated from Tomoya as a kid and can no longer talk about anime and games with him. So she draws as a revenge against the people who separated them for liking anime and games and doujins and stuff. And she points out that Utaha doesn't write her light novels for other people either. She's cold and calculating, and she's manipulative of people's emotions with her novels. So they both kind of don't write just for the love of it or draw for the love of it. And so we see that they're jealous of each other, but they're also becoming friends, basically. And they kind of launch into this argument about a bunch of tropey reasons why like they should be the one with Tomoya. Like Utaha's like, you're the childhood friend and you're a blonde foreigner, it never works out. And then she's like, well, you're the older girl, that doesn't work out either. And it's just kind of funny.
Wow.
Just a little meta conversation. And so back to present day, Utaha and Eruri are exhausted from arguing in present time. And Tomoya goes up to them and asks them to sign an autograph card that they can display at their Comiket booth. And he wants Eruri to do an illustration for it as well. And so Utaha tells him that he probably only wants it because it'd be worth a lot of money, but he swears to them he would never sell a treasure like this. And he's wanted it ever since the group was formed, and that moves both of them. So Eruri starts drawing, and then Megumi sees this happening, and she says, like, if I get another card, will you draw another one for me? And she goes to like go to the store, but before she can go, Utaha tells her, hey, buy 2. And then Eruri like embarrassedly says, make it 3, so they can all have their own little autograph card, because they all like being part of this group together. Aww. So basically, yeah, the show is sticking to things it does well. Sexy leg fan service, gorgeous, beautiful drawn eyes, and really fun characters who are justified in all their fan service actions because of the plot of being doujinshi game creators. Just a fun show. I really like it. And I would recommend going back to watch the first season beforehand as well. So, next show, Kabukibu, which is airing on Anime Strike. The studio is Studio Dean, who just got off doing Konosuba and Shogun Roku Season 2. The director... Yeah, 2 really good shows. The director Konosuba, of this one
especially
is Kazuhiro Yoneda, who did Yona of the Dawn, which is another really good show. So, let's see. Episode 1, the prologue. We meet the main character, whose name is Kurogo Kurusu, who is a high school student who grew up learning to love kabuki theater from his grandfather. So now he wants to start his own kabuki club in high school. And he has one friend who's into it named Tompo, but they need at least 3 more people to start a club. And he goes to his advisor to talk about it, and his advisor is kind of against it, but then he's really impressed because Kurusu like knows all of this stuff about kabuki makeup and lyrics, and he just like really impresses him and says, okay, go try and find a couple more kids and maybe I'll talk to you about a club. So he goes on a recruitment episode, basically. So the first kid they come across is this blonde dude with a red streak going through his hair, and his name is Shin Akutsu. And he's out on this terrace playing absolutely awful fucking metal music. And his voice is so bad that like Kurogo says it could curdle milk. And some girls are listening to him, but they start running away because it's so bad. But he does have like a dedicated group of groupie girls in the front still.
Nice.
And so he talks to Kuriko, and he says, my name is Jophiel, which means beauty of God. And he's like, and they're like, we want to recruit you because your dad was a kabuki performer. But he says, nah, I hate kabuki. It's a stuffy old art and it's terrible, and I don't want to join, basically. So that's the first guy they try to recruit. Next up is a person named Kaoru Asagi, who is in the drama club. And they're tall and they have short blonde hair, and a lot of the girls in the drama club look up to this person. And so the first years are all on Kaoru duty, since they don't usually get parts, which means they're basically this person's servants. But she didn't really ask, or Kaoru didn't. Damn, I blew the secret. The secret is that Kaoru is a girl, and she didn't really ask for all of this like admiration. So Kurugo goes to try to recruit her, but he didn't realize that she's a girl because she's tall and she has short hair. And she says, all kabuki actors are traditionally men. And so once he's recovered from the shock that she's a girl, he tells her that, whatever, this is a school club and the normal rules don't apply. It's my kabuki club and you can join if you want to. But there's the drama club president is another girl, and she sees that like he's trying to recruit her star of the drama club, and like she like throws like a flying kick at his face, and it was just to scare him, but he ends up like falling over and like landing on his mouth and breaking his middle tooth off.
Jesus.
Yeah. And so, but like he gets up and he's kind of smiling, but it's like, he's missing a tooth, so everybody kind of laughs. But that's the second recruit that failed. And so the next one is Hanamichi Niwa, who's a traditional Japanese dancer. But he doesn't come to school much and isn't in a club because of dance practice. So Kurugo like asks the teacher, and they say, well, he's supposed to be coming in for a parent-teacher conference the next day. And Kurugo meets him and sees that the dancer's face is like all bruised up for some reason. And another girl in his class named I forget what her name is actually, asks him like why he gave up dancing since he always loved it when he was growing up, and he doesn't answer her. But this girl tells Kurugo that like he was basically a prodigy as a child, and like he became an accredited dancer, like traditional Japanese dancer at age 10, and like he's just like a prodigy on the stage. So like Kurugo is still like wants to go after this guy. So finally, he's kind of almost getting close to giving up, but he kind of pumps himself back up one more time, and they're going to go check out like the practice room where their club would practice. And unfortunately, it's still locked, and it's locked by this kid named Jin Ebihara, who is in there practicing kabuki of all things. So he's the heir of a major kabuki family, and his stage name is Ozawa Otonosuke.
Ozawa.
Yeah, and he's rehearsing basically, and he's like really good. And so Kurugo like finds a way into the building and runs in and tries to recruit him, and that's the end of the episode basically. So my main interest in this show is that kabuki theater is super fucking weird. Like the actors like do these crazy voices on stage, and the dancing is really exotic and different, and I kind of just want to learn more about kabuki. And kind of in the same way that Studio Dean did a show about Rakugo that helped me learn a lot about Rakugo, which I never heard of before. I kind of want to find out more about kabuki through this show. I think this will be a pretty good platform to do that. And it also looks like there's going to be another cute girl introduced to the main cast in the next episode. And so it looks like...
It's the lolly.
I don't know. I can't remember, actually. I don't think
just say it. I don't know.
Yeah, but I think it's going to be a pretty balanced main cast, like male to female ratio. But yeah, it's Kabukibu.
Yay,
Fine.
Fridays.
Friday!
Starting off, the best censored show of the whole season, Seven Mortal Sins. Sen Nanatsu no Taizai. Studio Artland and TNK. Director is Kenji Yoshimoto. He did Unbreakable Machine Dog, Queen's Blade, which gives you an idea, and Genshiken 2.
And this is on Crunchyroll, and it's censored on Crunchyroll for sure.
Oh my, it's censored so badly.
It's crazy. There's just like floating huge demon symbols over everything. It's so bad.
It makes it basically unwatchable. But anyways, we start off. We got the fallen angel Lucifer, was betrayed by Michael, I believe. Mm-hmm. And he's like strapped to the cross, and he's like thrown out of heaven, and he crashes in through a church and lands in front of this very sexy nun in a sexy short nun outfit. And she's like, something, you're nice or something. And she's like, I'll bless you, whatever. And then Lucifer proceeds to fall the rest of the way into hell and lands at like the very bottom and runs into, it's Leviathan, I believe.
Mm-hmm. It's a girl who is like trying to touch her boobs constantly.
Yeah, and she's trying to get all over and be super Yuri, and I'm totally okay with it because she is smoking hot. She like wants her to take over hell, and Lucifer's like, I'm not going to do what you're going to say, but then she's like basically makes Leviathan her little minion, and they go to like this big old building in hell where all the other sins meet, and they're all named after all the sins except there's one added, which was vanity.
Oh yeah.
That's just the one extra one, and she's kind of all haughty and acts like she leads all of them, and they're all hot, and of course one of them's a lolly character. Other than that, they're all very well endowed. There's not much to this show. They're just talking and whatnot, and they fight, and of course it's just reasons to get the clothes ripped off, and then eventually Lucifer and Leviathan run off back to the mortal world, and they show up in that church, and then it ends on like her stabbing that nun from earlier.
Right.
And man, you just hate this show.
Well, I don't actually hate this show. I was going to say, I'm really impressed that you actually went through with the whole synopsis, because I started writing the synopsis and then I was like, synopsis, quote, porn. It's basically everything that happens in this show.
It has such a straightforward storyline. Yeah. Like I pulled all of that from my memory, yeah. But like I wrote on here, I'm like, man, Bcom, you don't have to be so sour. You just turn it into a drinking show, and it's pretty good. So like every censor, every boob jiggle, and every inappropriate touching you drink to, so you'll be so schmammered you never remember watching it in the first place by the end.
I can enjoy most shows that way, though.
And man, dude, I'd love me some Demon Babes. Just saying.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm sure this will be fun. Like when it's uncensored, like it's just the censoring is so bad. Like
it's
like covers everything.
DxD, like I have that on DVD and I just really enjoy it, but I can get behind the main character in that because he's like, for the opide. I'm like, yes, for the boobies. I can get behind that, man.
Yeah, I like when they have a good balance of humor in these like hentai shows, or well, not hentai shows, but really ecchi shows. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know, it was okay. I didn't think the fight scene was that good at the end, like, and there was a lot of really bad animation, I have to mention. Like at a certain point, I'm like, maybe you should make this show 12 minutes long and just animate half as much, but make it like better looking, what you do actually animate. I don't know.
I think they're doing it mostly to sell merchandise. Like I saw like a Bishojo figure of, I think, Leviathan, and I was like, whoa.
Oh yeah, collect all the 7 sin figures. Yeah, there you go. That's your merchandising for the day.
Oh, and I forgot to note that Lucifer took up the title of the sin of pride. So.
Oh, pride, yeah. Interesting.
Yep.
Well, I'm very interested to see how this show develops.
Okay, as he says with heavy sarcasm.
So, next show on the list, Hinako Note, which is on Crunchyroll. The studio is Passione, and the director is the acclaimed Takeo Takahashi, who directed Spice and Wolf, and recently Roka no Yusha, and shows like Yosuga no Sora too. So I don't know. He's an interesting director. He does a lot of weird stuff. Episode 1, My Talent is Being a Scarecrow. We're introduced to the main character.
Okay.
Hinako, whose talent is literally being a scarecrow. She is from the country, and for some reason, all of the animals around her are drawn to her.
Scarecrows are meant to scare away the animals out of the fields.
So the way it works is that she will stand outside of the fields, and then all of the animals go up to her instead of going to the field.
Okay.
So that's how they justify it. So, but she's like a little country bumpkin, and she's going to Tokyo for the first time, and like they like really play up how dumb she is and how naive she is, or innocent, and like she literally has like 3 little yellow chicks that constantly fly around her head when she's walking around. And her main character flaw is that she just can't talk to people very well. So like in the first scene in Tokyo, she, like a police officer comes up to her to like try and help her, and she just like freaks out, like, because she doesn't know how to talk to him. But she finds a place where she's staying, and she's greeted by a blue-haired girl named Queena, who has like a little cat mouth. And she sees her in this bookstore, and she's literally eating the pages out of a book. Like literally just eating pages. And
I don't recommend that.
She explains the reason for this is that she loves books so much that they're her friends, and she wants to just eat them up. which is stupid.
Wow.
So Quina shows her upstairs to where her apartment is, above the bookshop. And there's a maid inside her room who's a little lowly girl named Mayuki. I think all of these girls kind of qualify as lowlies, but that's up for debate because of stuff that happens later in the episode. But this girl is like especially tiny and squeaky voiced. She lives and works in this building as well. And apparently all of the residents who live in the apartments have to work downstairs, either in the bookstore, or we later find out there's a coffee shop attached to the bookstore. But schoolwork comes first because they're all in school too. So they can only work on weekends. And somehow this probably skirts around child labor laws in Japan, I guess. So Mayuki goes through the regular anime little girl routine of declaring that she's older than she looks and that she's not actually a child, blah, blah, blah. She's
I've never heard that one before.
Yeah, that's like every first episode where they're declaring lowlies are older than they actually look. She's apparently a year ahead of Hinako in school, even though she's like 4 years behind in appearance. And it turns out there's also a coffee shop behind the bookstore, like I said, and this show is literally just Is the Order a Rabbit all over again. It's very similar art style and everything. So at this point, Mayu reveals that they're in high school, to my disbelief, which is ridiculous. Hinako wants to join the theater club at school, she says. Because she wants to join theater club because she's always liked theater, but she's also always held herself back because she's terrible at talking or being in front of people. And so she starts kind of feeling homesick at this point in the episode, and the other girls notice, and they're like, hey, let's go to this nearby park because you're from the country and you probably are feeling really homesick for trees and like nature. So they are on their way to the park and they like buy like taiyaki, and it's funny, like Mayu gets the taiyaki for them because they like ask her, they tell her that she's their senpai and she needs to take care of them, because she's like really young looking, she wants to be thought of as a senpai, and so she gets really excited, and she goes up to this like taiyaki vendor to buy the taiyaki, and he offers her a discount because he thinks she's like 4 years old. And there's like this little shot of her like at the window for the vendor. She's like supposedly like 14, but she looks like she's like 7 at most. Like she's like tiny. Like ouch. Like, and they later say like, man, it looks like she's in elementary school. Like, doesn't it? Like, so she can't be more than like 10 or 11 basically by that measure, in terms of character design. So yeah, basically they get like dango and they enjoy the park, and they come across this open air theater production that's going on and getting set up in the park. And they bump into a girl there named Aki, or they call her Aki, but her full name's Chiaki, who's practicing with a theater troupe. And she's another one of their classmates, and she's actually the landlord of their building, even though she's like a little girl. And she used to be a child actress and was in the theater club at the school. And Hinako finds out that from Aki that the club is just on hiatus. It's not actually shut down. And it's only on hiatus because the advisor is on a theater trip. And so Aki advised her to start her own theater troupe with the other 4 girls who are living at above the coffee shop. And basically then the fan service begins for no reason. So we get this scene scene of Hinako taking a bath with like, she has like a little rubber ducky because she's a little kid, and then she has like a little stealth bomber that floats along the surface of the bath, and it floats into her cleavage, and we get all these suggestive shots of her cleavage, because even though she's a little girl, she apparently has huge breasts now that she's been hiding underneath all those clothes. And so yeah, this is the type of cute girls doing cute things show that I hate. I've dubbed it cute girls doing sexy things that they shouldn't be doing kind of show, basically. Like, it's just like that. It's just like, it's like 70% cute stuff, but then they throw in the sexual fan service, which makes it really uncomfortable. And there's really no reason for it, because like, you could watch a show like No No Biori, which has very, very little of any like even suggestion of fan service. And it's a great show, and it's like totally enjoyable despite not having those elements. So it's just disappointing. Like, this could have been a cute like show about cute girls in the city doing cute things, But instead, it's going to have a bunch of fan service in it. And so I'm not that interested.
Rightfully so.
And I don't think there's any reason to talk about episode 2. It's kind of just more of the same, basically. So let's move on to the next show.
Ooh, Rage of Bahamut Virgin Soul. It's the second season of Rage of Bahamut. Studio Mappa, director is Keiichi Sato, and he did the first season. So, yeah, for that.
And I have a note to say about this first season. So also, this is on Anime Strike, another Amazon show. And I binged through Rage of Bahamut Genesis, the first season of the show, like a couple days before I started this. And I just have to say, holy shit, was that show good. Like, it was so fucking awesome. Like, the first 6 or so episodes of Rage of Bahamut Genesis make it seem like it's just going to be like a pretty decent action show and like a little like adventure show with like some really fun characters like Favreau.
Fantasy stuff.
And Amara. But then episode 7 on through 12... I was just hyped out of my friggin' mind the entire time because there's all this crazy shit going down with like angels and demons and like battles, and like the animation is just out of this world from Mappa, who they just animated the shit out of it.
And you're pissed that nobody properly hyped this anime for you.
Like people were like, oh, it's pretty good for an anime that was based off a card game. And I'm like, no, this is like fucking amazing. Like I finished watching this show and like 10 minutes later, I went and bought the Blu-ray like immediately, like the collector's edition of the Blu-ray. Like I was like, I want the best version of this I can have.
You're like, I gotta have this. This is just way too good to pass up.
Yeah. So I'm super hyped about the second season, which by the way is 24 episodes instead of 12. So
that's going to be crazy.
Do you want to take this or should I take... why don't you take episode 1?
I'll take it. You've been talking a lot.
Indeed.
You know, that's what happens when you watch everything. So
Agreed.
Oh, man. Okay. So we're starting off with a group of heavily armored human knights attacking this like angelic type stronghold called the Temple Arc. And they kick its butt. Then we jump immediately back to the royal capital of Anatea. And we get some sketchy dudes delivering a carriage full of child demons for like slaves and stuff to a certain buyer. But they get interrupted by someone called the Rag Demon, who is, it's very obvious, and you find out almost right away, it's Azazel.
From season 1. Or yeah, Azazel, or yeah.
Azazel, yeah.
That's how I pronounce it, I don't know.
Yeah, the fat sketchy dude, he summons like this huge minotaur type monster thing, but the Rag Demon just like waxes the floor with it real quick. And he leaves the scene just before Kaiser Roll rides up on a unicorn.
Kaiser Roll.
Dude, I think Kaiser Roll every time I see his name. And yeah, so Kaiser rolls up and the Rag Demon made away just before he got there. Yeah, just like you said, season 1, we saw him being made the captain at the end. And then we do a nice little transition to a 16-year-old pink-haired Genki girl running through the streets yelling, "Good morning" to everyone in the market. Mm-hmm. Her name is Nina. And Baker throws her some bread, and she eats like 4 slices all at once. She's just chow down some food.
And I was thinking, like, she's eating a lot. She's probably related to Amuro somehow. Like, even her character design is like, this is suspicious. But
I think it was intentional to make the transition to a new main character easier.
Probably, yeah. And if there's not more to it, we don't know at this point if there's any other relationship, but yeah.
No, but then the market comes to a complete stop and they gather around when Lord Cheriose, the 17th?
Yep, that's right.
The new king of Anatea, he's returning from besieging that angel stronghold. Next, we have Nina helping out the construction workers, and she has just inhuman strength. She's carrying these huge things. All the guys around her are like, whoa, how's she even doing that? But she ends up moving a scaffolding for an artist who's painting a giant mural on the wall. And she points out to him that there's some pretty hard workers down there, right down there. But then he's like, no, those are enslaved demons that have been put to work. You should just probably ignore them. The mural is also portraying Lord Cherios defeating Bahamut and resurrecting the capital.
Which is clearly revisionist history because Favreau is the one who defeated Bahamut.
Yeah.
And then we find out we're 10 years in the future as well.
Yeah. That happened 10 years ago, whatever. So right off the bat, we find out that Nina's a little flustered by any male with at least rated a 5 on the hotness scale. And like she just always gets flustered, and she's just a 16-year-old hornball, which is totally believable.
She's very horny. Very
hormones are raging. She can't help herself. But it plays an important plot point where we will be getting to. So Cherio scolds Kaiser while watching a Gladiator match for not capturing the rag demon last night. It's causing him a lot of problems. The fight ends when the demons is down, and then another demon man and a young boy named Muguro come into the arena and help remove the defeated gladiator from the arena. The demon man looks up at the king out of the corner of his eye, and I mean, we're obviously know this is
the rag demon, yeah, or
Azazel,
yeah,
Azazel, yeah. Darn it, I scrolled up. You write way too much, man.
Oh, it's right here.
There we go. So then we skip to another scene where Nina returns home, which happens to be Bacchus's carriage. She's been crashing there, and Bacchus is like, you need to get out of here. This is a place for bounty hunters. She's like, I am a bounty hunter. I'm going to capture the rag demon.
Mm-hmm.
So go to the next scene. Kaiser has baited a trap for the rag demon in a church by holding a bunch of them hostages. Little fight scene, and then just before he jumps off a cliff, he tells Kaiser, I see you're still obnoxious. Kaiser immediately recognizes his eyes to be the same as the demon from the arena, so he knows, and we know he knows now. Nina then basically gets clotheslined by the rag demon running away. It does like 80 flips in the air, then gracefully lands on her feet. So she's got something else going on with her, and she does this like really ridiculously but cool scene where she's like chasing the demon down through the street, and she's just going like
1,000 miles per hour.
And like the animation's really good, cool with like her face and like when she's speeding up and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
She finally catches up to him and she pulls out a whip to fight him, but she sucks with it. So when she goes to like swing it back and then back forward, it wraps around the sign. So he gets away again. About that point, that's when Kaiser's men arrive, and they mistake Nina for being an accomplice with her. So they're chasing her as well. The rag demon then sees her in trouble because she's on top of like a tower, and like they blow it up with some wyverns or whatnot. So the rag demon sprouts some wings and it flies in to rescue her. But then she starts getting all flustered because she's pressed up against his chest, and he has such a beautiful face. And she then like bursts in this pink fiery ball, and he drops her. And then as she's being dropped, she turns into like this huge rag dragon and just starts wrecking the whole place. And the next thing she knows, she wakes up in a doctor's office, and the first person she sees is Rita, the zombie girl from season 1.
Oh, yeah. Do you want to take episode 2 also? Because I'm going to be doing the next show. It's up to you.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay.
So we start off right where the last one ended. Rita and her assistant Rocky, which is a hand, a disembodied hand, greet her as she's waking up. Nina's embarrassed to have transformed into a dragon again by accident. This must be a problem.
Yeah.
Rita then confirms that Azazel is the rag demon, and we knew this. And he's the one who had carried her to the clinic. Rita asks her if she's human or a dragon, because she doesn't know. They don't. And we find out she's like a dragon humanoid type, whatever.
Basically.
You find that out this episode, yeah. So Azazel and Muguro sit on top of a roof high above the village, and Azazel wonders what he could do if he had Nina's power, because he's trying to stop the oppression of the demons now. You apparently enjoyed the badass opening.
Yeah, the OP airs for the first time in episode 2, and I loved it. It's like kind of heavy metal, but it has like this beautiful like color palette of like red and white and black, kind of like Persona 5 color palette. And I'm just very into that aesthetic. It was really cool. And it's like, let it end. I don't know. It's really good. I fucking love it.
So we get some more info on Nina's character. She's writing a letter back to her mom in the village that explains her main worry is that there are a lot of young men in the city, and she may not be able to contain her horniness. She basically reveals that when she gets too horny, it causes her dragon transformation.
The fire starts burning within.
Oh, and then it bursts out. It is crazy. So Kaiser has now failed again for catching the rag demon, and King takes the Orleans Knights, which is his people, off the job and leaves it to his own Onyx soldiers / division. We then have Nina running into Azazel again. He explains that Cherios has turned the demons into their slaves. He raised the demon capital of Coctius and abducted many of them. Coctius, that's the name of a scout rifle
in Destiny. I know. I knew you were going to notice that.
Well, Destiny has like so much lore into it, so that like it's just cool.
Yeah,
it's one of the higher impact scout rifles. All right,
pretty good.
Moving back to the show, Nina sees the famine and poverty of the demons, and she basically notes it's really, really bad. And Azazel says he found Muguro when humans had clipped his wings and crushed his windpipe to be sold into slavery. Azazel yells and like begs Nina to lend the demons her power so that they can turn the tables on the humans, and he's just going way over the top. And that's when Rita steps in and basically just rescues Nina. I would like her the disembodied hand like punches him or something like that.
Yeah, and she has the best line of the episode. Yeah,
go ahead.
I thought you were a rag demon, not a nag demon.
So Azazel and Muguro go back to work at the arena, where the crowd are throwing bottles because a fight ended in both gladiators taking each other out. So there's no winning, nobody wins their bets, so on. We get a pretty neat transition as one final bottle flies and Bacchus drops a ball back in his carriage. Nina is writing another letter again to her mother, who told her not to unveil a secret of what lets her turn into a dragon. Because, yes, that would be a problem. Kaiser finds Azazel butchering some humans and stops it and tells him to get out of town because Cherios is getting serious. Oh, there was an earlier scene where Cherios told one of his Black Onyx Knights to follow Kaiser, and he is perched out the window. We do know that.
Right.
Kaiser asks Azazel if murdering humans will really lead the future Azazel wants for his demons, but Azazel tells him to just look around. And when he starts to look around, he's basically in a room of just mutilated demon bodies. There's like a bunch of eyeballs in a jar. There's some of them splayed out like mannequins and just one layer peeled away at a time. It's a very brutal scene. Azazel does end up telling Kaiser that he's not even worth killing. Azazel, on his way out, runs into Onyx soldiers as he's leaving and starts to fight them. It looks like he's kind of winning, and he does start off with the upper hand, but then the soldiers start using a ball of electricity to like ensnare him and knock him unconscious. But right before he's about to be unmasked, Muguro appears and releases an angelic light, which like forces all the soldiers to their knees. Like they had this armor that was just impervious to everything, except for this seems to be the one thing that can stop them. And he grabs Azazel and lifts him to the air, and they get the heck out of there. And here, you just take this last part.
Oh, and so, okay, so that would lead us to believe that Muguro has some kind of angel powers. And then it leads into this goddamn ED that's so cute. It's Nina and Hamza, the duck from the first season, and Bacchus's partner are like marching through like a video game side scroller. And all of the characters in the town are like interspersed in like scenes as they scroll by. It's really awesome. And then after the credits, Cherios orders his head soldier to kill Muguro, who he says is the holy child, the only one who's able to nullify their armor and who apparently escaped them when something happened 2 years ago. So,
yeah, I just would like to make a quick note that a crushed windpipe does not mean you would die. But there's different levels of damage that can be done. And if it's severe enough, yes, it can take away your ability to speak. But it would cause such bad breathing problems. There's no way in hell you could play your little ocarina.
Yeah, Muguro is constantly playing a little ocarina very beautifully, and it doesn't make a lot of sense since she has a crushed windpipe and would have a ton of problems breathing.
Yeah, if it was severe enough to affect your speech, there's no way you could do it. Would just, everything else would just almost be out of the park.
I mean, maybe we can say like it affected his vocal cords but didn't affect his, like, I don't know. I mean, it's a stretch, but like I guess there could be a way that he could still be okay but still not talk.
A crushed windpipe is a damaged your damaged airway.
Yeah.
So yeah, it could definitely easily affect your speaking, considering you have to like breathe out to make words and sounds for the most part. So yeah, playing a wind instrument properly is just, it'd be impossible.
But
if you had that severe damage.
Yeah.
But I'm nitpicking. That was the only thing I could nitpick. So
yeah, I mean, there's not a lot to hate about this episode. The animation is still top notch from Mappa, and I like Nina's character, even though she is crazily horny. And I miss Favreau. I want him to come back. He is listed in the ML credits. So.
Is he in one of the OP or the ED?
No, not yet. So I'm assuming that since this is a 24 episode show, we will probably get a mid-season OP change. And I would assume that he will be in that one if he shows up by then. So, yeah. Let's move on to the next show. And we have a spinoff called Is It Wrong to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon? Sword Oratoria, which is also on Anime Strike on Amazon.
I'll do this Japanese title.
Okay, have fun.
I
thought you were going to do it. Okay, so it's Dungeon ni Di wo Moto. God damn it. I can't. I always say that word wrong. Dungeon ni Di wo Motomeru no wa machigatteru daro ka gaiden. Sword Oratoria. It's by JC Staff. The director is Yohei Suzuki, who did not direct the first season, so it's a different director. He recently did Urara Meirocho from last season, and he's done Shimoneta as well. So this is a spin-off of the original show that will focus on Aiz Wallenstein, who is the blonde girl with the white outfit who has a sword, who Belle Cranel kind of falls in love with in the first season. Immediately after the credits, we meet three girls. One is Lafia, who's a little tiny girl who's an elf, and she is lacking in self-confidence in fighting in battle, which makes sense because she's really young, and I don't know why she's even fighting. And then Aiz saves her in the opening battle, and so we find out she kind of looks up to Aiz. There's also two very dark-skinned girls who barely wear any clothing at all. They wear very tiny tops and very short skirts. And the names are Tione and Tiona Hiryut. They're twin sisters. So it's 2 minutes and 27 seconds in the show, so it's time to really get around to the fan service now, apparently. Literally the girls are already making jokes about how they have flat chests. And it's God damn, is this going to be the level of character building we can expect from this show? But anyway, Aiz shows up, and Lafia apologizes to her for not being able to come through in the battle and defend herself. And Aiz kind of still has that quiet non-personality that she had all throughout the first season of this show. She basically barely speaks. I think it's her main flaw. And so her response is basically just to pet Lafia's head. And Lafia's reaction is that of a fangirl who's been touched by their favorite rock star idol. Then their boss shows up, the boss of their familia, and he's a young boy named Fane. And Tione is really into him. She pushes her breasts forward and starts squirming back and forth as she talks to him. And Tiona starts to rat on her for something she did, and Tione just buries her sister's face in her chest, smothering her, and says she wished she'd just stick to her usual boob jokes. And then so we get a quick scene of Tione bouncing her boobs up and down, saying, "Well, I have boobs, so blah blah blah." It's just, this show's going downhill really fast. It's been 5 fan service jokes in the space of 5 minutes already.
So a joke a minute?
Yeah, it just gets worse. So then more pancake flat chest jokes at this point. I'm why am I still watching this? So, and then they finally get back to the plot a little bit. So an older elf woman comes up to Lafia and she's you have potential. But as she's saying that you have potential, we're seeing a panning shot over a naked bodied Lafia. And it's when she says the words potential, it's panning over her breasts. It's oh yeah, your breasts have potential. It's what the show is trying to basically say, I think. Wow. And so she's engulfed in flames, holding the staff in this panning shot, and it's just dumb. A man-beast character named Bet says he won't fight with someone who's afraid of monsters like Lafia, though, because she needs to get over herself. And then immediately we cut to another scene where Aiz is now naked, and she's getting into a hot spring to take a bath.
Come on, everybody gets their own screen time, man.
So basically all 4 girls have either been naked or half naked throughout this entire episode. I don't know how this is avoided an ecchi tag on my enemy list. How? It's so ecchi. But anyway, the village is attacked at that point by a ton of caterpillar type creatures that all excrete this weird acidic purple liquid that just dissolves everything. Like it literally just dissolves Tiona's metal sword within seconds. So Lafia in this battle is trying to work up the courage to use her incantation magic against the monsters, but she basically just can't do it. Like she's a little girl, like she's like a child soldier being asked to do something she can't like emotionally prepare herself for yet. She has a lot of potential as a magic user apparently, but she's not ready yet. So Oz steps in and she uses her wind magic, and she does this like awesome like twisting jumping move with her sword and takes down a bunch of these caterpillars, which sort of gets everybody else fired up, except like Tione is being like suspended. Apparently the stuff that these caterpillars can emit, that like goo, can also become physical, and like they can use it as tentacles to grab Tione for bondage fan service purposes, I guess. That's the only reason why it's there. So the stream's like, she basically like decides like, I need to break out of this somehow. So she cuts open the tentacles that are holding her and like gets acid burns all over her body as she breaks out.
Is eating away her clothes?
Yes. And at the end of the episode, like we see that she's getting like washed down with some like kind of potion to like remove the burns, and she has her top off because it got melted away by the acid. And basically we see a scene at the end of this episode where they're now down in the dungeons and a bunch of minotaurs come up to attack them. They're on like level 17 of the basement of the dungeons, and the minotaurs get scared away, but they run up to the higher floors. So they're like, oh no, they're going to run up and run into adventurers who are too low level to face these minotaurs. And this is something that happened in the first episode of the original series where Belle runs into one of the minotaurs. And now we're seeing this scene from Aiza's point of view as she chases down this final minotaur, and she gets there just in time to save him. And he gets the blood of this minotaur gets all over Belle's body, and Bet, that man beast guy, shows up and he's like, hey look, it's Tomato Kid, he looks like a tomato.
Oh my god.
And Eyes kind of feels bad for him, and that's the end of the first episode, and that's all I've seen so far. So I mean, the thing that's interesting about this show is that it's going to take place in the same time period as the first season, just from an alternate perspective. So if you're a really big fan of like the original How to Is It Wrong to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon, like you might want to see this to learn more about Eyes. Like apparently the light novel readers say that this focuses a lot on her character, and we didn't learn much about her in the original show. However, it's so much fan service per second. Like if you're not a fan of fan service, you're not going to want to watch this. Like it's so much generic fan service in this show. It's ridiculous. But
it sounds like it was intentionally made to be the fan service that the other one didn't have.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, it's 4 girls from the previous show who were also used for fan service in that show. And now it's focusing on them for more fan service. So, yeah.
I mean, if they're making money from it, I mean, it's a good business strategy, but I don't want to watch it.
So let's move on to Saturday and
yes,
Recreators. Yeah, this is on Anime Strike from Amazon as well. The studio is Troika. And the director is A. Aoki, who did Aldnoah Zero also with Troika, and he's also known for doing Fate Zero, so pretty good director here. Should I take this one, or do you want to take it? It is a lot of writing. I'll probably take it. It's a lot.
Jesus.
So this is my top candidate for best new show of this season. It instantly grabbed me as soon as the episode started, and had like these weird images around a city, and they were following this dark-haired girl in glasses as she's like walking through the city and then eventually to a train station. And every shot of the background is unbelievably detailed, and it's just really well animated as well. But we watch her as she goes out onto a platform, and we see like a police officer kind of look at her suspiciously. And then as a train is coming, she jumps in front of the train. And so presumably she's dead. She's committed suicide. But then we go to a totally different character. We go to a normal boy's point of view named Sota, who introduces himself as the narrator of the story in a kind of mysterious way. We find out that he's a really big fan of anime, light novels, and browsing like this universe's version of Pixiv on his computer, or Pixiv, I don't know how you pronounce that. And he's also like an artist. He's always drawing on his tablet, and but he's struggling to find inspiration for a new drawing. So he starts to watch his favorite anime on his like iPad, basically. But as he's watching it, it blue screens and starts flickering like a virus has taken over it, and it's like all these German words start appearing on the screen. And then he gets sucked into the world of the anime that he was just watching. And he meets a girl named Silesia Upateria, who to me looks a lot like Asuka Langley from Neon Genesis Evangelion. She's got long red hair and is tall and very beautiful. And she's piloting a mech, and she's fighting this other girl who's wearing like a battle uniform and has white hair. And Silesia is losing, and Sota gets caught up in the middle of it, getting a scratch on his hand from like these knives that the white-haired girl is throwing out in every direction. And Silesia basically like saves him, like tackles him out of the way before he gets hurt even more, and they both get transported back to his own world. And so basically, like Sota goes downstairs, like he can't believe what's happened. Like he doesn't realize what's going on, and he goes down and gets a drink from the refrigerator. His mom's like, "Stop making so much noise upstairs, blah, blah, blah. You better be studying." And he goes back upstairs. We get this like kind of cool shot of him from the first person, like the camera's in between the rims of his glasses, watching as he walks up back towards his bedroom. And he opens the bedroom door, and Silesia is standing there like freaking out, and she like quietly like drags him back into the room and closes the door, and then she opens the door again to like turn on the light switch and then closes it again. It's a kind of a really funny moment. And she realizes she needs to be quiet because this kid's mom is downstairs. But at the same time, she's like, what the hell is going on? Where am I? So basically, the idea of this show is that characters from light novel stories can get drawn out into the real world, which becomes a really fun thing to explore.
Because it's the opposite of the epidemic of being stuck in a fantasy world.
Exactly. It's the opposite of that, which I really like. So Sota basically turns out like, you know, he likes anime, he likes light novels, and he recognizes her from the light novel about her and the anime as well. And he basically tells her like, you're this girl, like here, I have the light novel. And he like shows the light novel to her and says like, this is about you. Like, I know your whole story. And she's kind of freaking out, but she kind of like understands and calms down a little bit. And it's like, wow, I'm in the world of the gods apparently. And he starts like fanboying over her a little bit, and she's like, stop, you need to relax a little bit. I like that how she tells him that like, you need to relax, because she's still trying to just adjust to this. And basically like they at that point get attacked. So the girl with the white hair shows up in the real world outside the window of his bedroom. And she starts like challenging Silesia to a battle. And like Silesia takes her sword and sticks it through his window pane, like breaking the window and like sliding the window open because she doesn't know how to open windows apparently, which is a recurring theme. And
yeah, this show hates windows. Yeah, hates glass.
So Silesia like grabs Sota and like flies out the window of his bedroom with her, and like because she's gonna like run away or like at least find this girl. But like he starts panicking and like squirming, and so they both fall from like 100 feet in the air on top of this dude's like brand new Volkswagen car, which was really funny. And then they like throw the dude out of the car and they start driving it. And Silesia's like, oh, this is just like as simple as my mech. Like, oh, here's the button to like use the weapons, and she presses the button and like all the music cuts out and it's just like the windshield wipers go back and forth. So I like that little gag. I think the humor had really good timing in the show. And so Silesia and the villain girl wind up battling above what I think is like the Shinjuku Gyoen Gardens in the middle of Tokyo. And as they're battling, a third girl, a quiet one with white hair named Meteora, joins in time to help drive the villain girl off. And Silesia asks her if what the villain girl was saying is true, if she's actually from like another world too. And the girl named Meteora confirms, like, yeah, I'm trapped in this world too. And so Silesia wants to find out more about what's going on. So she like looks down at Soda like from way above and waves goodbye to him. We think that they're going off for good. But so he gets home and he's like, man, what the hell was all that? And he opens his door and both of the girls are sitting on the floor of his bedroom. And they're like, yeah, we have nowhere else to go. So can we just stay here with you? And they also broke his window to get in, which continues the theme of just totally disrespecting his windows. And so basically after the credits, there's also a cute scene of the three of them going to a 7-Eleven, which I thought was really funny because like they're walking down the street and Sota just looks like a normal kid, but Meteora and like Silesia look like these beautiful, tall, light novel characters. So yeah. Hiroyuki Sawano is doing the soundtrack for this as well, and it's pretty epic. It sounds similar to like everything he's done since Gundam Unicorn though, but like it's just another quality soundtrack from him and another quality show. I'll move on to episode 2. So
was this in the original?
Yeah, it definitely was.
I don't remember doing it.
I mean, we don't have to cover episode 2. It's super good. We could cover it
like
next
honestly
week.
Though, because I don't think it was out. Otherwise I would have watched it.
Oh yeah. So you know what? Let's cover this in our first week episode, which is a spoiler. We're going to cover this show, but because there wasn't going to be an episode of Recreators that week to cover anyway. So let's move that discussion to next week.
Oh, perfect.
Okay. So next
Keep
show,
talking.
My Hero Academia season 2, which is on Crunchyroll. Boku no Hero Academia, 2nd season. The studio is Bones, and the director is Kenji Nagasaki, who did season 1 of the show, and also, Gundam Build Fighters and Classroom Crisis and some other shows. So this starts off with like a kind of long recap of stuff that happened in the first season to catch everybody up. Probably a little bit more recap than we really needed. But in the aftermath of the attack by the villains on the academy, the faculty discuss like what their next move should be, and they decide that like Shiragaki, who is the head of the League of Villains, is kind of a man-child who didn't have a clear plan, so everything went okay. But
man-child.
Yeah. But if he was ever to have somebody like more wise directing his actions, he might be a real problem. Foreshadowing. So Deku.
I've read the manga. Yes, that is foreshadowing.
Yeah, Deku is sitting at home.
All right, Gio, don't rub on the mic. That's not good.
Deku is sitting at home watching video of All Might, realizing how far he is still from his goal, and thinking about how the villains kind of toyed with him when he was fighting them at the academy, and how he has to get stronger. At school, their teacher Aizawa is still like completely wrapped in bandages after getting really hurt during that battle. And he tells them that the fight isn't over because they're going to jump right into the UA Sports Festival, which is coming up. Apparently, this sports festival isn't just like any normal sports festival. It's like extremely popular, so much so that it's replaced the Olympics. And if the heroes students impress, they can be signed out of school right into a pro hero agency. So Deku's doing a lot of thinking about like why he wants to become a hero, and he asks Ochako what her reasoning is, and she says that it's basically for the money because her family runs a construction company, but they haven't gotten any work and they're all flat broke. I mean, her dad just wants her to follow her own dream, but she wants to like give back to them and send them on a trip to Hawaii or something, she says, and like just help them out in general.
Which going to Hawaii for Japan people is a very big thing.
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah, because when I went to Hawaii a couple years ago, ton of Japanese tourists.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
it's a pretty long flight.
Not really for Japanese people.
Well, it's still.
I see why it's kind of popular.
Far away from like LA. Well, I guess it's not exactly halfway in between anyway. I don't know. Yeah,
I want to say for Japan, if you're going to go to like an exotic place, I think it's like one of the closest and safest.
Okay.
I'll say.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And
just on the side note, when we went to the Pearl Harbor museum thing, memorial. The Japanese people outnumbered the Americans like 30-1.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it was just interesting to see that many people there.
Well, when I was in Hiroshima, I think the foreigners outnumbered the Japanese people like 1.5 to 1 or something like that.
Yeah, when I say like there was our group, and I don't remember another American group there or another group that wasn't Japanese.
Yeah. Oh, and by Hiroshima, I mean the Peace Museum there, the Atomic Bomb Museum. Yeah. So anyway, at the end of this episode, All Might pulls Deku aside for lunch, and he's like, we're kind of running out of time. I can only use my power for 50 minutes in a row now. And so I need you to basically make your coming out party to the world at this sports festival. I need you to make people believe in you as a hero. And then we see the ED, which is like this super cute montage of all the girl heroes in the hero class, like just being cute and like looking badass and doing cute things. I just really like that they did an ED like that's dedicated to all the girls. So,
which girl hero is your favorite?
Oh, fuck. I mean, I really like Suyu, the frog girl.
She's a popular pick.
Oh my god. I like the invisible girl. You can't see her head or like her limbs. I love her. She's just like really cracks me up all the time. I don't know. They're all great.
I like the girl who can like make anything out of nothing.
Oh yeah, that's pretty cool too. Man. All right. So episode 15 is the first day of the Roaring Sports Festival. So it's basically a round robin tournament divided by grade. And it's not just the hero classes that participate. Also the business class, the support class, and the general studies courses are all at the academy, and they all can participate in this sports festival. So a couple of students come over to the hero class A because they heard about like the battle with the League of Villains, and they want to check them out basically. And like one guy in particular with purple hair starts like talking shit and tells Katsuki that, many of the students in the other courses only enrolled so they would have the chance to prove themselves at this festival. So he needs to watch out. But Katsuki, being the arrogant badass he is, just ignores the riffraff and says, doesn't matter what you say as long as I rise to the top. So then we get like basically a really equal parts badass and equal parts like quirky training montage as all of the different heroes are training in their own little unique ways. It's kind of funny. And then we get to the first day of the festival and everybody's like in the locker room underneath the stadium. Security is tight because of the villain attacks. And then the white and red haired kid, Todoroki, he tells Midoriya or Deku on the morning that he's noticed that All Might has his eyes on Deku. And he's gonna like make a point to beat him in this festival because he's better. And Deku like says, hey, Todoroki, objectively, you are better than me, but that doesn't stop me from aiming for the first spot anyway. So they go up into the stadium. The referee for this fight is a woman named Midnight, who's called the R-rated hero because she wears really tight-fitting clothes and has like really big busty breasts.
And I'll tell you, in the manga, it's almost portrayed that she doesn't even have clothes on.
Oh, really? She looks
like
way clothed in this. Yeah.
Like they just don't like put the nipple on.
Okay.
That's the way it is in the manga.
Oh, so they definitely toned that down a little bit for this show.
It's either that or they get giant magical sensors from
Tsunanatsu no Taizai.
Yeah.
So Katsuki is the top student in the hero class, so he has the job of delivering a little speech before the event starts, and he's supposed to say something nice basically, but he basically just says, I'm gonna be number one. So he puts a target on his own back, kind of, and Deku's like, I think he's driving himself into a corner to pump himself up. And so then they say that the first event is going to be this 4-kilometer race around the outskirts of the stadium. And as long as they stay on the course, it doesn't matter what you do. You can do anything. You can use any power. So the race starts, and the first obstacle is there's like a hallway to get out of the stadium, and it's kind of small. And there's like hundreds of kids participating in this. So they're all just like trampling over one another. And except like a couple people jump out to the front, including Todoroki, who uses his ice powers to like freeze everyone behind him. So he's the first one to run into the second obstacle, which is the giant robots that they had fought during the first season. And he gets the benefit of having this scene animated for him where he uses his ice powers on the robot, and it looks absolutely unbelievable. The animation, it's like Bones' top animator did this cut, and like he just like is breathing like, you know, like ice out of his like mouth, and like it just looks freaking amazing. Midoriya like sees him get by and like faces the robots and like thinks about his next move, and that's where the second episode ends. So I'm pumped for more of this. I think it's just a really good example of a shonen show done well. It's really hype. I love the soundtrack, and Bones is animating it, so it's gonna look great. So
yeah, there's always that. And moving on, Attack on Titan Season 2, finally. If you were holding your breath for this, I'm sorry for the many, many billions of times you died.
It is about fucking time.
Okay, you can watch this on Crunchyroll. Japanese title is Shingeki no Kyojin. Studio Wit. Director Tetsuro Araki, who did Season 1 of Attack on Titan. Cabaneri of the Iron Fortress, which was amazing. Death Note, which was wildly popular. And also Guilty Crown. Mm-hmm. It picks up just dead on where the first season ended. There's a Titan in the wall. Pastor Nick warns that no matter what, it has to be kept out of the sunlight, so they end up just draping like these sheets over it and whatever. I had no problem with the opening, but you were underwhelmed.
Yeah, the OP to me was just a little bit underwhelming because it sounded so much like the Linked Horizon OPs from season 1, but like just not quite as good as those ones. Like Gurren no Yumiya like spawned so many memes for being so iconic, and even the second OP, Jiu no Tsubasa, was also like just really freaking awesome. This one was like a little bit more toned down, and that might have to do with the feel of this second season. Maybe it's a little bit more somber season, so we'll see.
I don't know. So we're starting off with the section commander trying to get more info about these Titans that are in the walls from Pastor Nick, and like she's just straight up holding him over the ledge. Like all she has to do is let go, and he would die, falls to his death. But he would literally rather die than say anything about this. The show then jumps back 12 hours to a group of some of the soldiers, including Connie and Sasha, our favorite potato girl. They're being held custody because we already know they're trying to weed out if there are more Titans in the skies among all of them. That's when they are suddenly attacked from the south by a swarm of Titans that just came out of nowhere. So now Walrose has apparently been breached. We then just jump back to Eren, and he's dreaming about his past when his mother told him to be a man and be strong for Mikasa. He's just getting belittled. It's crazy. He wakes up and finds Mikasa sitting in a chair next to him asleep, just watching over him and whatnot. And then they have a little bit of a dialogue. It's not that really important. And then suddenly Armin barges in and tells them the Titans have breached Walrose. Meanwhile, it's Mike or Mitch.
I think it's just Mike, yeah.
Mike is fighting off the Titans by himself when a gigantic 17-meter tall, like gorilla-looking Titan appears, and he's like, "Oh crap! It's time to get the hell out of here." So he whistles for his horse, and Titans have never attacked anything but other humans before. Well, this thing picks up the horse and throws it at him, and like he dodges it, but still like it makes him fly off the roof, and he falls right into the clutches of this little tiny Titan, and like it sticks the legs in his mouth and like starts to chomp on him, and that's when that big gorilla Titan's like, wait, and it stops.
It speaks. It literally speaks.
Yeah, he says wait, and the smaller Titan stops, and he's like walking up to it, and then the smaller Titan starts to chew again, and then he just like grabs it and just like squeezes his head, and it's like his eyeballs explode. He just kills the smaller Titan outright because he's like, I said stop. Mm-hmm. The Gorilla Titan tends to basically question Mike about this maneuver gear he's using. It's rather unique and different. What is this? And like Mike's not getting anything out. He's just like terrified. He's like, why is this Titan talking to me? I'm already a dead man. I think he doesn't get anything out of him, so the big Gorilla Titan just takes the gear off of him. He's like, I'll just take it back with me to study. And then he starts to walk away, then he stops and he's kind of like, oh, you can move again. And then the other Titans descend on Mike, and Mike's like freaking out. He's crying. He's like, I didn't want to die this way. And they shred him to pieces. And man, you had a problem with that OP. Oh, that outro was terrible.
Yeah, that outro is pretty bad. I don't like it either.
Oh, it's so bad. And I've given it like a second try, and I'm like, that's just no good. But I will say there's a point where like the Titans start to attack, and like one literally like pirouettes into a run, and I fucking lost it.
It was like a move straight out of Yuri on Ice. It was hilarious.
I had to pause the show because I started laughing so hard I was crying. I was like, what was that about?
I just love all the Titan memes and GIFs and stuff online. It's fantastic.
Oh yeah, it's just some crazy stuff. Episode 27, I Am Home. Armin asks Eren and Mikasa if they think the walls might be made from a hardened Titan skin, which they do delve in more after this episode because I've seen that one. Since Ani was able to encase herself in that crystal low imprisonment she put herself in. So was it Nick? No, it wasn't Nick. The priest.
Yeah, Pastor Nick. Yep.
Yeah. So they basically have Pastor Nick in custody, and it's Eren and Mikasa and Armin and Levi, and they're getting into like this wagon, basically a wagon train, and they're going to go out to one of the walls or something like that. And so they knew, oh right, the flashback scene of Sasha growing up in the forest, and she is just ravenously hungry. Just it's insane. Like she's like, her father's like, you need to stop eating this, and she's just like basically just like elbows in the face, and she's like ravenous. There's no other way to put it. She's like lost her mind. She's like so hungry, but she doesn't look starved to death in the thing. Mm-hmm. Her father says it's about time they gave up their forest land to the government because many people have been driven from their own homes from the Titans invading, and they've been moving to the forest because it's like the only land left, and they can feed more people by farming a land rather than hunting a forest. So Sasha we're back to modern times, and she's rushing back home. Do you keep clicking so I don't lose track?
Oh yeah. Is that helping or hurting?
It's distracting. I'm like,
oh, sorry about that. I'm also doing that for myself.
That's fine. Well, I know what's going on now. Back to same time. It's only 3 years later. Mm-hmm. And she's rushing to her village, and she sees like Titan footprints on the path to the villages, but she runs across a new village that was recently constructed in the forest. She comes upon a home where there's like a Titan inside the home. It's a very smaller Titan eating like a mother right in front of her daughter's eyes, and the daughter's just like sitting there basically in stunned silence. Just, she's shut down. She can't even comprehend this. So Sasha grabs an axe, and she's in there, and she's just like hacking at the back of his neck, trying to get, down to that spine before it heals completely. And it's almost comical how when she does throw it back one more time, she actually lets go and it flies up and sticks into the ceiling, and her face, she's just like, ah! Tell me that was funny.
That was pretty funny, yeah.
But this other Titan's just like totally distracted on eating this other lady, and she ends up grabbing the little girl and picking her up and running off. And that's kind of when the Titan takes notice and starts like chasing him down. And she tells the other girl to run ahead. And she picked up a bow and arrows at some point, and she goes to like fire him at the Titan and whatnot. And she's like, well, if I can at least blind him, I can, we can make an escape that way. He can't stop us. Turns out in the end, she does get one in his eye, but she misses with two, and she's only got one arrow left. And she ends up basically just sprinting at him. She gets up on a cliff, and she sprints at him and like jabs it in his other eye. But the other Titan grabs her, but because of all the blood, she's like able to slip out, and she starts running off again when then there's a party of horses coming her way, and it's actually her father on horseback, and they actually picked up the little girl. And then we jump to Connie, who has arrived at his village and has found it destroyed. All the houses are in ruin. But the weird thing is they found the Titan laying on top of his home, but it's like a disfigured Titan. They can't move, and they're trying to figure out why it even got there. into the episode.
Yeah. So pretty intriguing couple first episodes. I really liked episode 2. I loved finding out Sasha's backstory to why she's always hungry and eating potatoes. And I just loved the way that she like worked up the courage to like just jump at that Titan and just shove that arrow into its eye. That was a badass scene.
Yeah, Sasha is a badass girl.
Definitely. Let's move on to the next show then. Granblue Fantasy, the animation on Crunchyroll. Studio is A1 Pictures. The director is Yuki Ito, who's done Maho Shoujo Lyrical Nanoha Vivid, and he's also co-directing with Ayako Kurata, who was just an animation director for Inuyasha and an old OVA, Area 88. So basically, this is a very straightforward fantasy show. The episode starts with a...
Based off a game.
Oh yeah, based off a game by Psy Games, who also created the Rage of Bahamut games. So yeah. This episode starts with an armored woman, Lieutenant Catalina, who's helping this like young girl.
Another badass woman.
Yeah, she's awesome. Named this little girl's named Illyria, and she's helping her escape from this sky ship in the air. And as soon as Catalina opens her mouth, you can tell she's voiced by Miyuki Sawashiro, who I love. And combined with her character design, this character is already my favorite. So Illyria, they get stopped by this like douchebag captain guy who's like, you can't get
He's
away.
a chode.
Yeah.
I immediately was like, this dude's a chode. I'm just calling him chode guy.
Yeah, and he's holding like some crystal in a vial, and Illyria uses some sort of power to like make the crystal explode and blow a hole in the side of the airship that they're on. And she kind of falls unconsciously towards the forest like thousands of feet below. And then the OP plays, which is by the band Bump of Chicken, who I've liked a lot recently. Who
Me too.
Did The March Comes in Like a Lion OPs or EDs, and they did like the Kekai Sensen Blood Blockade Battlefront OP or ED. I can't remember which one.
That one I really, really liked.
Yeah, it was really good. I think it was the OP. Yeah. It also... let's see. So we meet the main character at this point. His name is Gran, who's a boy who's growing up in a nearby village. He's chopping wood and is talking with his childhood friend Aaron. And like he has this little like dragon familiar named Virn, who they occasionally call a little lizard, but he gets really pissed off when you call him a lizard. They all see this explosion from the battleship flying above, and they see like this blue light falling towards the forest in the distance, and Gran is like, we gotta go check it out. So he and Virn, the little floating dragon, go off into the forest, and they find Illyria, who has fallen to the ground near a shrine. She's apparently okay. They go and approach her and they wake her up, and she basically asks them like where she is, and they decide to help her find Catalina. But some soldiers stumble across them almost immediately. But Gran, who's been training with a sword since he was a little kid, because he wants to be an adventurer, is able to fend these soldiers off, and they run away into the forest. But like one of the knights who he kind of knocked down fires off a flare, which luckily Catalina sees first, so she comes running. We find out from her when they meet up that the soldiers are from the Erst Empire, and they run into a couple more soldiers, and we see that Catalina is a total badass. She like just slices them apart and then uses ice magic to freeze a couple more in place. And Catalina tells Gran that Lyria is a very special girl who the Empire has been keeping confined until now. And so Gran sees that they're in trouble and offers to help them find the way out of the woods because he knows the woods very well. Along the way, they save this father whose daughter is being threatened by soldiers for information. They save him and the daughter, and then they're thanked by him, but he's like, Gran, be careful what you're doing. You're going to get yourself into trouble here. And they continue running away, but that douchebag chode Captain Pommern shows up again. And I'm
glad the name's sticking.
Yeah, Captain Chode. His sorcerers like summon like this 5-headed Hydra, which attacks Gran and like immediately deals a fatal blow. Like Gran is on the ground, bleeding out, dying. And Lyria runs up to him and like sees that he is literally passed away. But then uses her power to kind of like dive into his subconscious. If you've played like Final Fantasy 15, there's a moment where Noctis and like the princess are like underwater floating towards each other. It's a scene like that. And like she like basically uses her power to revive Grant. And so when he comes back to, he and Lyria both are able to summon the dragon Bahamut, which apparently Cygames are huge fans of Bahamut because they made another game about Bahamut too.
Well, their logo is an outline of Bahamut, so
that would make sense. So yeah,
I'm just assuming. So
they ask for the dragon's help, and that's where the first episode cuts off. And then immediately we jump into episode 2. So Palmer and the captain orders his Hydra to launch an attack at Bahamut, but the fireballs that the Hydra launches have like no effect. Bahamut summons this huge ball of energy in front of him and like launches it at the Hydra, just like completely destroying it. And so Palmer and all of his troops run away.
KO.
Flawless victory.
Basically.
Lyria touches the pendant on her chest, and Bahamut dissolves into this blue light and gets sucked back into her pendant. And then Gran faints from all of this happening. So later, Gran has a flashback to when he was a kid, and we get a little backstory where he's reading a letter from his father, who is an adventurer, who is writing to Gran saying, I'm waiting for you on this Isle of Estelucia, Island of the Astrals, and I want you to make it here someday. And Gran's dream is to become a Skyfarer and go there himself, basically. But his friend Aaron is cynical and tells him it's all just a fairy tale and not to believe in this stuff. So Gran wakes up in present time, and Lyria's there waiting by his bedside, and she hugs him and kind of embarrasses him by like jumping into his bed. She doesn't have many inhibitions, so he kind of falls out of bed and like hurts himself again. And Catalina comes upstairs and she explains the situation, like basically that the only victim of the incident was Gran. Nobody from the village was injured, but Gran actually did die. And Lyria's power is now the only thing that keeps him walking. She basically gave him half of her life force to keep him alive. But the key is that they can't go too far away from each other now, or either one of them will die. So they have to stick together. So he also finds out Lyria is kind of the key to the Empire's research on these things called primal crystals. And she's able to control primal beasts like Bahamut, who was apparently asleep on the island until they summoned him. And Catalina says that the Astrals disappeared hundreds of years ago and they left no descendants. And Lyria doesn't even know, she doesn't have any memories from before the Empire took her. So it's very mysterious. The town throws a feast to celebrate that, like, you know, everybody's still alive and Gran's okay. But Catalina breaks the news to the villagers that she's the one who brought the Empire to the island. And then Gran says that he is going to leave with them tomorrow because he's finally going to take his chance to become a traveler. And everybody's kind of supportive of this, except for Aaron, who's pissed that his friend is leaving. But even Aaron's dad is like, hey, Gran has been waiting for this day since you boys were growing up. So it's time to let him go. And so the next morning, they jump in this like little airship that kind of looks like a plane with like wings, like a little plane. And they're like, the whole town is there to see Gran off. And Catalina starts up and starts to take off, but she doesn't really know how to pilot this plane. So they're about to crash and like into a cliff wall before she finally figured out how to pull up.
It's funny because like they're taking off and like she's bouncing off the ground and like parts are coming off. And it does this one shot of like the people from town. They're all just standing there with like blank stares, like, what's going on?
So they barely clear this cliff wall and they see like the whole beautiful sky and they're like, yeah, our adventure is beginning, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, it's a very generic fantasy show. But I like the protagonists. I like that Gran isn't like a whiny little bitch. Like he takes matters into his own hands. I like both of the main female leads. Like Catalina is awesome. And Lyria is like an interesting character who I want to find out more about. And I just really like the character designs as well. I think they're really well done for this.
I mean, it's based off a game, so the character designs were already done, you know, and probably very well looked after. But I would say I was kind of bored with this episode.
Yeah.
It was more or less just an info dump, which I forgive like I like to read lots of books. I forgive lots of books and even anime and like beginnings of movies and stuff like that. That you sometimes you have to. You just have to trudge through that quick info dump, and then you can really enjoy the rest of the series.
Yeah, I'm sure we're going to get introduced to like a whole party of characters and like a whole bunch of more lore. And yeah, once we get past the lore dumps and we get into the action, I'm sure it'll be more interesting at that point.
Oh, how do I describe this next show?
It's final show of the spring impressions.
It's this beautifully and intentionally crafted, flaming, ongoing train wreck of a show.
Eromanga Sensei, which is on Crunchyroll. Studios, A1 Pictures. Director, Ryohei Takashita, who directed Gekkan Shoujo Nozaki-kun, and he should be fucking working on season 2 of that, not this pile of garbage. Here's how I introduce this show.
You're insulting garbage by calling this show garbage.
From the writer of Ore Aimo, My Little Sister Can't Possibly Be This Cute, a story about a brother who wants to bang his 14-year-old sister, comes a new story about a brother who wants to bang his 12-year-old sister. So from the opening scene, just the opening scene, like you see this, like the brother is getting introduced because like the little sister is moving in with his family. They were living apart until this point. She's
I think their parents remarried.
Oh, okay. I think that's what happened. Yeah, their parents got back together.
Because she's a stepsister.
Yeah, stepsister. So yeah, it's his new little stepsister, and like the camera pans all the way up her body, like she licks her lips. Like it's like just from the first second of this show, it's like already getting under my skin. It's so bad. So much to the point that I'm literally singing Linkin Park in my head, like crawling in my skin. Like I'm reverting back to like middle school version of me listening to Linkin Park.
No, those wounds will not heal, brother. You're done.
Yeah,
Yeah, you get to see the exact second in the time frame of this show when the older brother suddenly becomes sexually interested in his little sister.
And that's when she was 9.
And we weren't even 2 minutes into the show.
So it turns out the sister's...
I gave myself goosebumps. Jesus.
The sister's name is Sagiri. And the thing with her is that she has not come out of her room for the entire past year. At least...
Oh, yeah. It does this. I jumped to like a couple years in the future, right?
Yeah, it's like 3 years later. So she's 12 now instead of 9. And
that's so much better.
Oh, God. And... So she's living with her brother, or her stepbrother, Masamune Izumi, who we find out is a light novel author. And his little sister is a stepsister, and that's how they're going to get around having the incest in the show, because this is going to be an incest show.
I also want to note, like, in this first episode, they portray him as being a successful light novel author.
Yeah, he, like, writes up a storm. Like, he just is constantly writing.
And then we'll get into it later, but in episode 2, then they like totally downgrade him. It's strange.
Yeah, it's a little bit weird. But yeah, so like the writer of this who wrote Oreimo, I think is still pissed that he had to change the ending of the Oreimo anime to make it less incesty. So that's why she's a stepsister in this show. So he can go full on incest and have so much fun.
They're not blood related.
They're not blood related. Okay. Yeah. So Eromanga Sensei.
It's like ignored the pedophilia part, but okay.
Yeah. Eromanga Sensei is the name of the artist who works and draws on Izumi's light novels. And they have a blog called At the Tip of the Panties. And like the blog is...
I do like that part though.
It's interesting because the blog is kind of shitting on Izumi. And he's like, why is my artist like saying crappy things about me? We quickly learn that the artist, Eromanga Sensei, is actually his little stepsister.
It's just blatantly obvious before the main character finds out.
Yeah. And she's currently holding a live streaming event where she's drawing a character he killed off in an earlier novel. And of course, the camera shoves itself up her butt while she's like waggling around and she's drawing. And she takes a picture of her butt with her phone so she can draw the character that she's drawing more accurately, because apparently she can just draw from her own butt because she's such a perfect looking anime girl. And so basically before the scene started, we saw Izumi delivering like a tray of food outside to her room. And he's watching the stream of Eromanga Sensei, and he sees this tray of food on a chair in the back of the shot. And he's like, wait, what does this mean? Could somebody else possibly have the same exact tray of food? And no, he realizes that his little stepsister is actually his like arrow drawing artist. And like she ends her stream and she starts taking off the mask she was wearing to conceal her identity, and she starts getting undressed, and she doesn't realize that she's left the stream going. She hasn't shut the stream off yet, so everybody's watching. And so Izumi like jumps into action and like runs and starts banging on her door and says, please turn the stream off. And she finally opens the door for like the first time in a year, and she greets him, and he asks her if she's Eromanga Sensei, and she lies and tells him she has no idea what she's talking about. But then he tells her that she's been doing amazing artwork, and she's like, oh, really? But then she still slams the door on him because she's like embarrassed. She's such an asshole, this little sister.
Yeah, it's like, and the way she tries to explain the way she reacts is because, do we find out yet that her parents are dead?
I think so. Well, at some point this episode, we do find out that she's like...
You find out that like shortly after they remarried, they show that the mother's dead. They blatantly don't say anything about the father.
Yeah, well, so do they share a father or do they share a mother?
They share the mother.
Okay, so the mom is dead, and so they don't... Yeah, they don't... The dad just like is never there, basically.
Yeah, and another point, he's like, but we have a guardian that watches after us. So like either the father's dead or he's probably working overseas because this is terrible writing. Gosh.
So Izumi goes to talk to his manager, who is also like a really gorgeous looking woman, who it's like, or his editor basically at the like publishing company. And he has like two new ideas for light novels that he's written like 8 chapters each for, and he has like a full manuscript ready to go for an anime if one of them gets turned into an anime. So he's like a crazy hard worker, and like to the point where it's like almost unbelievable.
Yep.
And then he gets home and he tells Sagiri that he decides to tell her like, I'm the author of the light novel that you've been drawing for, because she didn't know that either. And so she invites him into her room, and he like pats her head when he sees that the room is nice and clean. And then she tells him, please stop. And he...
For living out of your room is a huge surprise.
Yeah. It's so clean for somebody.
That place should be trashed.
It should be total trash. So here's my theory. Since nobody else is home besides him, whenever he goes to school, I think she comes out of her room and uses the whole house. That's my theory. Like, otherwise, none of this makes any sense for her to be trapped.
Well, you're thinking farther ahead than the writer, so.
I am. So, he says, like, she says to stop patting her head, and then he asks, like, when she says stop, he asks, like, what do you mean stop? Treating you like a child? And she says, no, stop touching me. But she says this, like, in a really soft voice, and she's like, sit over there, and he can't really hear her, and he thinks she says touch me there,
and he gets an immediate erection.
Yeah, and then she like says like, no, sit over there, you asshole. And so he sits on the floor. How many times
did you write fuck in the synopsis?
I wrote fuck a lot, and I'm skipping many of them. You can thank me later, audience. So he's sitting on the floor, and like then she gets down on all fours and is looking for a headset underneath her bed. So the camera takes this opportunity to shoot right up her butt and right up her shirt, which is hanging down, to get like a little bit of under boob from, she doesn't even have boobs, but she's 12. Like, so, God damn it. So anyway, she's getting this headset, which is attached to like an amplifier, because she talks so softly that she literally needs to wear a microphone headset so he can hear her. Why is that even written in the show? I don't know. I think it's kind of funny, actually. Like, that's one of the parts of the show I was like, okay, that's sort of clever. Like, she should just talk up, but like, if she's like that shy, I guess it makes sense that she would use a microphone. They then have this really stupid argument over whether it's okay for her to be drawing lewd drawings, since she's been doing it for 3 years. So if she's been drawing for 3 years, then she was like either 9 or 10 years old when she started drawing lewd, like drawings.
He's concerned about her drawing lewd pictures because she's underage, but yet he has sexual desires for... Your priorities are really fucked up,
really
bro.
wrong priorities, yeah. She started drawing because her mom taught her how to draw, and so that's how she got into it. Azumi basically tells her that he wants to be a good brother to her and thinks that they're a family and he just needs to take care of his family. And she says she doesn't really see it that way. Like, just living under the same roof doesn't make him family to her. And she kind of like throws him out of the room again, basically. I hate this show so much at this point. Like, Sagiri is just built and designed to be your typical Emoto fetish character. Yeah. And it's like, you know exactly where this is going. However, episode 2 also came out. Holy shit.
We got to talk about the ending of the show because...
Oh, yeah.
Once the ED come up, I thought it was over. But no, there was an extra scene after it where another lolly showed up. So if you didn't like the little sister lolly character, we now have another lolly character you can look at so we can have a lolly Harmon show. Harem show.
Harmon.
And then now we can... and now we can arrest this writer for this horrible garbage pedophilic show.
Let's not arrest him yet. We can arrest him in like a couple more minutes. So episode 2 starts off with that new loli. Her name is Megumi Jino. And she's Sagiri's classmate, but at this point I'm like, wait, Sagiri's been locked in a room for a year. When did she go to class? And how does this... Yeah. How does this girl even know about her? Like, I don't even understand. So Megumi shows up at the store and Masamune answers it. And she instantly starts like flirting with him in a weird way, telling him that he has to call her either Megumin or Megumi without the honorific because she wants to be close with Sagiri's like older brother. We're getting there.
No, hurry up.
She's then like, "Why, Masamune? Why didn't you just fall in love with me at first sight? All guys fall in love with me at first sight. Wait, are you gay?" And he's like, "No, I'm not gay. What the hell's wrong with you?" And then so he then has like an inner monologue.
So much more is wrong with her.
Yeah,
so much.
He has an inner monologue where he's like thinking about this, and he's like, "Moron. Every day I wash the panties of my beautiful younger sister who's so much more beautiful than you. Why would I ever react to you?" I'm like, Jesus Christ, this guy is like a fucking psychopath. So then Megumi then says, "Well, if you don't react to me, then your dick is really useless." And what? And he's like, he is himself. It's like, what? And then, yeah, she's like, girls my age all love dicks. And then
she says dick like 32 times.
Yeah, and then she stares at his crotch and he like covers himself because he's like embarrassed. And then he's like, "I'm sure your little sister loves dicks too." And he's like, "Shut up, take that back." But like she just keeps talking about dicks like over and over. And I'm like, what is this show even? What is this? It's so ridiculous. It's such bait. And then so anyway, we move on. Apparently she came to get Sagiri to come to school. And so she like gets invited inside and she's excited when she finds out that Masamune is like an otaku because apparently she's an otaku too. But she says her
self-proclaimed.
Yeah, she's a self-proclaimed otaku whose favorite manga is One P, which is One Piece. And then Masamune is like, "Oh, One Piece?" Because he's like, "Oh, so she's like a normie."
Yeah, that's like, just total mainstream stuff.
Yeah, she's not a real otaku, so he starts like thinking less of her. And so he goes up to Sagiri's room to try and like get her to come down, but she won't. She's like, "No, I'm not." She starts throwing like a little tantrum, like hitting her pillow against her bed, like, "No, I won't come out of my room." But Masamune decides like maybe she'll talk to her on the phone. So he puts an earpiece in and calls his sister's phone and then like goes back downstairs so she can listen in on the conversation. So Megumi like proposes this plan of canceling their internet. So Sagiri has to leave her room, but Masamune is like also just horrified by his plan.
Which I will say the show grabbed me at that point too, because I was horrified in the process.
I was like, "Oh no, that sounds terrible. Like we can't do that.
That's a terrible idea."
Like I think he says something like, "Are you even human? Like you're a monster.
Like, you're gonna cause people to go on like psychotic rampages. This is not good for anybody."
And like Megumi's like, "Well, it's pointless to have the internet if you have friends in real life." And I'm like, no. So Megumi discovers that
that's a terrible argument.
That Masamune has an earpiece in, and so she starts fucking with him. Basically, she realizes that Sagiri is listening in on the conversation, so she starts flirting really hard with Masamune and making like noises like out of a hentai, like she's like pleasuring him or like rubbing him or something. And so Sagiri starts making really loud noises, like she's like kicking stuff in her room upstairs. And also, I don't understand why Megumi would think that this would piss Sagiri off. Like, she just assumes that Sagiri is in love with her older brother, I guess. At this point, it's kind of dumb.
Yeah, it's just we need to stop questioning the writing of this show.
Okay,
because it's
that's
just
a good
not going to
point.
Makes sense.
So Masamune explains to Megumi that just because he and his sister live together doesn't mean they're in a romantic relationship. And then Sagiri hears him say that and gives a disappointed look. Like, oh, we're not in a romantic relationship?
Yeah, we immediately find out that Sagiri does also have the hots for her older brother.
So Megumi finally leaves.
I shivered.
And Sagiri recorded the whole call, and she's like listening back to it, like hearing what her brother said about her. Like, because Megumi like tricked the brother into continuing to talk about his sister, like after he had hung up his own phone. She had like spotted the phone number on his phone when she grabbed it from him, and she had started her own phone call with her own phone behind her back. And so like the brother said like all these nice things about her, and then also said like, yeah, she's like a light novelist who draws like Eromanga, and I'm really proud of her. Like, it's ridiculous. Anyway, we find out that Masamune's classmate Tomoe, another girl, works at the bookstore, and none of his light novels are really selling. This is like what you said, like, so he's not a very good selling author.
Apparently, even though they, said he was very successful in the first episode.
Yeah, so
whatever.
He's like only kind of successful. So another author's light novels are really successful, and they're like outselling his, and her name is Elf Yamada. And
she has elf ears.
Yes.
Just gonna put that out there.
And Izumi runs into her at his editor's office at the publisher, and she turns out to be a bratty, blonde, lonely girl. We've got number 3.
Yay.
So she wants Eromanga Sensei to illustrate her next book because she's fallen in love with the art. But Masamune's like, I won't let you steal away my artist and also his little sister. So he goes home and he begs Sagiri not to abandon him to draw for this other girl, and Sagiri has like no idea what he's talking about, but basically it just asks him to like refill her snacks, and he bought her some snacks, but they were like, she doesn't like them. Like, apparently the snacks he buys for her are like those you would bring to like a Buddhist shrine as an offering, rather than just like tasty chips and like chocolate and stuff. So she asks him to like, please just bring tastier stuff. And then she overheard on the phone conversation earlier that he enjoys washing her underwear.
Oh God.
So she also says like, also, I'm gonna wash my underwear from now on. Please never touch them again. And and
he's so devastated.
He's like, his life is now over. Basically, like that was his favorite thing to do.
And then the outro changes, and it's her doing her own laundry, and you get to watch the underwear. You get to watch her dance and her underwear spin in the dryer. And
I have to say that ED is really cute. I'm a sucker for EDs that are about characters like dancing to the music. Like, and it's really well done, but in context, it's fucking horrifying.
Because she's maybe wearing just a shirt and it's constantly flying up.
Oh, that too. And just the fact that
her vagina should be hanging out.
And
it's so
God,
bad.
it's so bad. It's so bad. But that is the end of our spring impressions. So we've come to the moment of truth now, which we are calling the vote. So we're changing things up this season because we covered like every show in the universe last season, and it drove us crazy.
And if we tried to do it in the summer season, we would die.
Yeah.
Or become something completely unnatural.
Yeah, the spring is fucking full of shows. And so we decided that we're going to cover 10 shows. And the way we're going to decide is we're going to pick a consensus of 6 shows that we all we both agree on. And then each of us is going to get 2 shows that even if the other person doesn't agree with, they can just lock them in. Now we're both forced to watch all 10 of these shows. So we'll try to use these picks for good and not evil going forward.
And Bcom has successfully made both his locks torturous for me. Congratulations.
You're welcome. So we've also decided that we'll cover short anime twice this season, but not at the beginning. We'll cover them once at mid-season and once at the end, since they're easy to watch in chunks, and we'll have a better idea of what's a good short show at that point.
Yep.
Also, like with Winter, we may end up making mid-season cuts if some of these shows go downhill. So that presents us with the opportunity to replace a show with another one that we just barely cut off here if we decide that one of the shows we chose is not worth watching anymore. Or if our listeners really want us to be talking about a show and we're not talking about it, they can hit us up on Twitter and we'll take that into consideration about new shows we're covering. For sure. And just to get some stuff out of the way, there's a couple shows we're not covering just for various reasons. The Eccentric Family is on season 2, and neither of us are caught up to that. I've heard it's really good, but not watching it. Boruto. I'm literally on episode 1 of Naruto, so I'm way behind.
Like just Naruto or Shippuden?
Literally Naruto.
How?
Because I just never watched Naruto.
Possible?
I literally started watching Naruto a month ago. I watched the first episode. That's where I am.
Oh my god.
And so Berserk 2017, we both hated the CG from the first season, so we're just not watching that. We're not subjecting
it makes
ourselves.
It so hard to watch.
Yeah. And Natsume Yujincho season 6, we're both 6 seasons behind, so not gonna cover that one. So we both have lists of 10 shows in order that are our favorites from this season. So you want to read them off or maybe give a short explanation of why you liked those shows? Go for it.
I'll just read them off. I'll read them off from 1 to 10. Number 1, Shingeki no Bahamut Virgin Soul. My number 2 is Zirokara Hajime Moho no Sho. My number 3 is Alice to Zoroku. 4 is Recreators. Would you stop editing in the middle of
Sorry about that.
If you guys don't know, Bcom cannot overlook the slightest misspelling in anything, which makes it really fun for me when I intentionally misspell entire things.
Yeah, exactly. You live for these moments.
I do. I believe I said my number 4 is Recreators. Mm-hmm. Number 5, Busou Shoujo Machiavellianism.
Oh God.
Number 6, Sakura Quest. Number 7, KADO, The Right Answer. 8, Attack on Titan Season 2. 9, Sen no Natsu no Taizai. 10, What Do You Do at the End of the World? How about you, Bcom?
So my picks in order. Number 1, Rage Bahamut Virgin Soul. We agree there. Number 2, Recreators. Number 3, Sakura Quest. Number 4, Grimoire of Zero. Number 5, My Hero Academia. Number 6, Attack on Titan Season 2. Number 7, Tsuki ga Kirei, that wonderful romance show. Number 8, Granblue Fantasy. Number 9, Kabukibu. And number 10, Alice and Zoroku. So from that, doing a little bit of math and rankings, we came up with a top 6 consensus. And one thing we should note is that Little Witch Academia takes up one of these spots because it is getting carried over from last season.
Correct.
So, number 1, we will be watching Little Witch Academia.
Woo!
Thank God. We will also be watching Rage of Bahamut Virgin Soul.
All right.
Hell yes. Number 3 is Recreators.
Digging it.
Number 4, Grimoire of Zero.
Really liking that one.
And number 5, Sakura Quest, which I am loving. Number 6, Alice and Alex. That would be a very different show. Alice and Zoroku. So now we have to try and save a couple of shows.
Now, yes, these are our locks. And just by going in the orders of my ranking, I picked my first lock show as Busou Shoujo Machiavellianism.
God have mercy on my soul.
That is such a shut your brain off, just enjoy the shenanigans show that I have to give it credit.
And going by my rankings and by general popularity, I feel like my first lock has to be My Hero Academia because I just think we have to cover it, and I think it's a good show.
And my thing about that is I read the manga, and it's really hard for me to just not read manga and then watch the anime. Is to watch a movie and then watch the same movie a month later. it's really hard for me. So it's going to kill me to watch that show.
Yeah, I mean, it's fairly slow paced. I mean, it's a shonen show that's getting drawn out a lot. So, I mean, it's good. And I think what will save it for you is that Bones animating it is making it look really awesome.
Yeah. So when I watch it, like, I know the story, so my commentary won't be about the story, but it'll be mostly about how the animation went and how true it probably was to the manga, or things I noticed that they actually improved upon, and so on and so forth. But my number 2 lock is, of course, I had to throw in Attack on Titan Season 2.
Thank God.
I was aware if I didn't pick it, I would force your hand to pick it.
Yeah, and since you already kind of got your show that you wanted to watch, which was Armed Girls.
And I didn't really have anything else. And we both kind of agreed on that the only show that probably didn't make our list that might be good would be KADO, the right answer.
Yeah, so that's what I was in between. So with my last lock here, like I was totally in between Tsuki ga Kirei and KADO, the right answer. And I think that they're eventually both going to end up being good shows. But from what I had already seen of KADO, I thought that it had a bigger chance to be a boring show. And also I was a little bit turned off by the CG animation in it. And I thought that maybe that could get worse too and become a nagging issue.
I'm afraid if KADO does start getting more political heavy, that will be a big turnoff for me because I won't care for that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, if it gets too bureaucratic and boring, then yeah, I won't like it either. But I've heard good things from where it's continued on. But Tsuki ga Kirei had a wonderful first episode and another great second episode. I've even seen the third episode at this point, which we'll be covering in a later week, and that was really good as well. So I'm excited to add that as my second lock. So that's our list of 10 shows. We left out quite a few things. There's a lot of garbage, steaming garbage on the pile, and just a couple shows that barely missed. So that's it. Let us know what you think of our picks. You can hit us up on Twitter. But that's where we're going to end it for part 2. Thanks for listening. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe to us on YouTube to get updates on new podcasts and other videos. And like I said, follow us on Twitter at Nerdom and Other for updates as well.
Laters.
See you next week.